Okay, we're ready to go, everybody? Make sure your phones are on. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the special meeting to discuss the budget, as a budget workshop, to discuss that budget this evening. I see lots of staff here, and it is actually Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. It's 5:05 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order now and call for Quorum Check, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Here.
Councilmember Buck.
Here.
Councilmember Bowman. Here. Councilmember Fitzpatrick. Here. Councilmember Jarian.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Here. Quorum is present. We shall proceed again. The subject this evening is to present and to discuss the proposed FY 2024 budget. I think it's finding a very interesting presentation tonight, and so I welcome everybody, all of you, for coming. There was a citizen to be heard opportunity. No one did sign up, so I'm assuming that someone will proceed the way normally will. So let's go ahead and turn it over now to our city manager to begin the process.
Mayor, I'll start out with some thank yous. First, I'll turn to all of this wonderful staff that we have here and thank them for the days and months and hours that they and the rest of their staff put in on getting their department budgets. And of course, to Christine and Mateo, our finance department, for all the work that they did in getting it ready and put together for you and getting it sent out in time for not only the council but for the residents to have a chance to look at it. And then also to the council members, we really appreciate the fact that you took the time to come in and talk with us about the budget. And some of you have given us some other questions tonight. We look forward to hearing those and having either us or the staff do it. So the rundown for this evening is the way we normally do our budget, and that is first we're going to have a presentation by Grady Reed. He is with HDR. He is our rate consultant. And so we're going to be talking water, sewer, or water, wastewater, and stormwater rates for the upcoming budget year. And then we're going to turn our focus on our budget itself. And we're going to start talking about the process, and then we're going to talk about items that were cut, and then we're going to go through the budget with you and answer your questions, and then we'll have lots of discussion along the way and toward the end itself. And then our goal is, of course, to get a lot of feedback and make whatever corrections that we need so that we can start preparing for the rest of the budget cycle.
Right, and if there's any specific comments or questions that anybody in council has as the presentations are going on, that's perfectly fine. We don't need to wait. So also, just for everybody's application, we'll probably try to take a break at around 6 o'clock. We'll see where we are in the process, but a little break in between, and then get for everybody to just have a little break for a while, and then we'll get back on it. So Kim, please go.
Thank you. First, I'm ready to go ahead and start then with Grady Reed, and can you pass the clicker over? Thank you. So this is Grady. I'm sure some of you recognize him. He is exceptionally good at helping us keep our water, wastewater, and stormwater rates where they need to be in order not only to cover our operating but to cover our capital needs as well. So I'll let you go through your program, and then you can ask questions.
Thank you, Ms. Turner, and thank you, Mayor and City Council. You may be too highly praised of my abilities, but I do appreciate that. I say this every year, and I've been doing this for the City of Universal City for many years. And y'all are one of the clients that I always look forward to working with. Y'all have such a great staff. It's been great working with Randy and Athena, as well as others from your finance departments. They're always very receptive. They're always very responsive, and I really do appreciate that. And that's something that I can't say everywhere that I go.
Is it turned on?
I think so. It's great. Live stream.
Find it off the smartboard.
Just go to whoever has the slide, you just go to the next one.
You have to click into the PowerPoint and then just do the arrow button.
There we go.
There we go. You can go to the next one after that.
Next slide.
So So I want to start my presentation just by giving you a little bit of background. We're going to start on wastewater, then we'll go to water, and then we'll look at the stormwater. Whenever we start on wastewater, I want to start out by talking about Sarah. Of course, you have two wholesale wastewater treatment entities, the San Antonio River Authority and CCMA. Sarah has been increasing their rates over the last few years. This year, those rates for residential customers are going up about 9.4% for each residential customer. That's lower than it was last year. And as we kind of move forward, we're expecting that Sarah is going to continue to increase their rates to the city. However, we don't expect that those increases are going to continue to be as high as they have been in the past. Looking forward, they should be somewhere right around 5%, give or take, as all of these increases on the Sarah side, they're primarily associated with Sarah's doing a lot of capital upgrades on their wastewater treatment plants. And so, of course, they have to pass those costs along to their customers, which Universal City is one of. On the commercial side, Sarah's only going to increase their commercial rates about 1.9%, right at 2% for this upcoming year. And then really, I kind of expect that that's going to be the commercial rate increase moving forward, to be about 2% or less. So what that really means for the city is the Sarah treatment expenses between what we have budgeted for fiscal year 2024 through fiscal year 2028. We're going to see about a $342,000 increase, or about 24% over where you are for this upcoming fiscal year on the Sarah side. Switching gears a little bit and talking about CCMA over that same time period, fiscal year 24, this upcoming fiscal year through fiscal year 28. We would expect the CCMA treatment expenses to go up about 10% over that time. That's in part due to rate increases on their side. CCMA has not been increasing rates to quite the extent that Sarah has, nor do they expect to in the future, although that could always change. So that 10% is in part due to some rate increases as well as growth in the number of customers on the city side. As the city grows and sends more wastewater flows to both of these wholesale treatment operations, that also increases the bill that the city has to pay. So kind of getting away from your wholesale treatment operations for a little bit, other things that we do have included in the budget on the wastewater side, we have included $250,000 for wastewater rehabilitation projects in 2024. We then increased that in the budget to $300,000 in 2025 due to the remainder of our projection period. Our rate model goes through to fiscal year 2028. We also have included funds for the public works yard capital improvements in all years at $150,000 a year. That is an increase over what we had been planning in the past. And as well, last year when I was here, we really talked a lot about the cost of all these other commodities, just gas, electricity, and materials. The good news is we were seeing much smaller price increases year over year in those commodities. However, those prices are going to remain high. I don't necessarily expect to see those prices go down anytime in the near future.
Quick question, if you don't mind, can you go back to that previous slide?
Yes, sir.
The middle bullet right there, money's been included for wastewater rehab projects. Is that our sewer system within Universal City, or it's for the wastewater treatment portion at the end location?
That is the city's sewer system within the city.
Thank you.
So on the water side, there are ongoing projects that are being funded through current bond money. So that money has already been incorporated into the rate model through debt service. We do have 3 additional tanks that will be rehabilitated, repainted. Those are associated with plants number 8, 9, and 10. We're assuming at this point that those will be cash funded from cellular water tank revenue. So the idea is that the city rents out space on its water tanks. We take that revenue, account for it separately, kind of set it aside, if you will, so that whenever those water tanks need to be rehabilitated, we have money set aside to pay cash for those projects, and we don't have to debt fund them. Just like on the wastewater side, we do have the same amount of money for water rehab projects, and again, that's rehabbing the city's system. So pipes, tanks, anything else really that's not storage tanks. And then we've also included the same funds for the public works yard capital improvements at $150,000 a year. out of the water fund as well. For water and wastewater, we do not have any new debt for capital projects in the planning period. I'll talk a little bit more about debt a couple of slides down. So this is just a summary of kind of everything that I've talked about for the CIP projects as we have them through 2028. Again, you can see the $150,000 in there for the public works yard on both the water and wastewater side. The other money in there for rehab, the money in there for the tank repaintings in 2025, 26, and 27. And you can see that the source of funding for them is tank. That's this tank fund and accumulating those revenues off of renting the space. We do have one other project in there, the Walmart water line at $350,000 in this upcoming fiscal year. That is right now planned to be funded through ARPA funds. So that's a grant, so it's not rate funds or debt or anything like that.
Got a question?
Yes, sir.
So I know this is just a slideshow, but is this an official capital improvement plan that we could use for impact fees, or how much of this could we throw towards impact fees? I guess that's the first question.
So impact fees, the city updated their impact fees, Randy, was it 2 years ago? I believe somewhere around that time frame. At the time that the city did the impact fee study, there was an approved capital improvement plan that was associated with the impact fee study. But if you follow Chapter 395 strictly, which is the governing code for impact fees can only be spent on funds for projects that were in that CIP that was used at the time the impact fees were developed. And those projects are only associated with growth. So typically, if you look on here, like these rehab projects, typically those are not going to be eligible for impact fee funds because you're taking something and fixing it or replacing it with what was already in the ground.
I just saw CIP and I got excited because some of those things we could throw towards impact fees, but if this is not the official one, then I understand. So
Okay.
Thank you for answering that.
You're welcome. Let me go to the next one. So where we're at as far as water and wastewater and recommending changes for those, what we would recommend this year is basically a 3% across the board increase on all the water and wastewater rates. That's both the demand charge and the volume rate. Basically, that's an inflationary type of increase. We did have a little bit larger rate increase last year. And when I was here last year, at that time, we were really expecting the increase this year to be somewhere in the order of 6%. So the good news is, while it's still a rate increase, we're about half of where we thought we would be. And that's due to a few factors. Mostly 2022 was a good year for water revenue. It was dry, it was hot. This year is looking like it could be a good year for water revenue if it stays dry and hot, depending on what happens with water use restrictions. And the other thing that's really benefiting your utility is just interest rates. While it's bad if you want to buy something, the utility is making a whole lot more money on the money that it has invested. So your interest revenue is much higher than what we had anticipated as well. So that all helps the utility and helps kind of bring down the rate increases a little bit. I do also just say in here that future inflationary rate increases may still be needed. I do still have some other rate increases in the model as well in these future years. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what this really kind of means, this just kind of graphically shows the stacked bars are the expenses, the city's operating expenses is the dark blue. The blue, kind of lighter blue above that is the existing debt service associated with the water and wastewater fund. And then the green on top of that is cash funded projects. That's the city's rehab, water and wastewater rehab, as well as the public works yard capital improvements. So if you do a 3% across the board increase for water and wastewater for a residential customer that's using 6,000 gallons of water and 5,000 gallons of wastewater per month, which is about your average residential customer, they would see an increase of $2.80 a month. If they're using more than that, their bill would go up higher. If they're using less than that, then obviously that increase would be less. Again, I do have future rate increases out there of 2%. Those are just kind of inflationary increases at this point. It is important to note, and we'll see this on the next slide too, is that there is some debt that rolls off in 2026. So there is, you can see that kind of light blue bar gets just a little bit thinner in 2026. So as that debt goes off, there will be some more capacity out there to either issue more debt to replace that debt or cash fund other projects. Those are not in the CIP right now, but just so you can kind of see how that bar dips a little bit in 2026. That's because there's some debt that goes away. The next slide, this just kind of shows your month's operating reserves and your debt service coverage ratio. Debt service coverage ratio, that's no problem. Most lenders will want you to have a 1.25 coverage ratio to issue debt. You're going to be well above that. You're well above that now. You should stay well above that. The month's operating reserves for water and wastewater, we like to see about 6 months worth of cash on hand to pay for operating funds, to pay for operating expenses. And that's just because there's a lot of variability in your year-to-year revenue on the water and wastewater side, more so on the water side than wastewater, just due to weather. Like I said, this summer is looking like it's going to be hot and dry, so we would expect revenues to be pretty good. However, we do have those occasional summers where it's wet, and summer is Christmas time for your water utility. So if it rains all summer, you'll see a very large reduction in your water revenue. So we always want to make sure that we have adequate funds on hand in case that happens, and just in case there's anything unexpected that happens to the system that we need to fix or things like that. So all that to say is that we're projecting that you're going to be within 6 and 7 months worth of cash on hand out there in 2026. That we're projecting that to go up a little bit, but again, that's primarily just due to that debt coming off. And so if that debt is replaced with something else, then you'll stay closer to that 6 months, that 6 month target. To the next slide. So on the stormwater side, we had a 15% rate increase last year, which was the largest rate increase that we had seen in stormwater for a while. And really the idea behind that, and one of the reasons for that 15% rate increase is for years we've been trying to kind of generate enough revenue that we can cash fund projects that were about $200,000 to $250,000 a year. And as we talked a little bit more before about commodity prices, and just the fact of the matter is that for years we were planning on $200,000 a year worth of cash expenses out of the stormwater fund, and it just got to the point where $200,000 wasn't buying you what $200,000 used to buy you. So we're trying to increase that funding a little bit, and really set a new goal to be able to fund $250,000 worth of capital projects a year. Again, pay cash for those, not issue debt. And so that was in part why we saw such a large rate increase last year, was almost just kind of playing catch up and trying to get there. With all of that said, the projected capital spending for this upcoming fiscal year is $370,000, so over that $250,000 goal. And unlike, I don't want to say unlike the water and wastewater, which most costs are stable there as well, but we do see more variability in those costs. All of your other stormwater costs, they remain relatively stable from year to year. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So here we're recommending a 5% increase for this upcoming fiscal year. That's in line with the recommendations from last year's rate study. So we're kind of right where we expected we would be. Which again, we don't see a lot of variability year to year in stormwater revenue. So we really have a much better handle on kind of where that utility is going over these upcoming years. I will say again that what we're aiming for is about $250,000 worth of cash fund capital. If the utility continues to spend more than that every year in cash fund capital, then we would need additional rate increases in the future. So on the stormwater side, what that means is that you have 2 tiers, I believe, for your single family customers based on the amount of square footage that's associated with those customers. So your largest tier, your most expensive tier, they would see 27 cents per month increase with a 5% increase on the stormwater rate. So their bill would go up to $5.67 a month. I tried to pull comparable stormwater charges, and you're kind of right in the pack with everyone else around in this area. Some of those have not been updated in a while. So I think you're good with kind of where you're at there. You're not the cheapest, and you're certainly far from the most expensive.
So those are not current figures?
They are
The other cities?
they are current as best as I could find
Okay, all right.
at this point. So we kind of look at the same graph for stormwater. Here again, you have the operating expenses, that dark blue bar. There is no debt, outstanding debt associated with stormwater utility. Those green bars are your cash funded projects. So again, you can see in 2024, it's a little bit higher. That's because we're funding $370,000, where most of those other years it's $250,000. So we are expecting this year that you will deficit spend on your stormwater fund. You will use prior years' fund balance to cover that, which is there. And then that'll kind of draw that fund balance down a little bit to where it is. So the next slide. So on the stormwater fund, this is your month's operating reserve. Here we only have the 3-month target instead of the 6-month target. Again, we don't see, there's very little year-to-year variability in your stormwater revenue. That's pretty much guaranteed revenue. So that's our goal is 3 months. We would expect that you would end this upcoming fiscal year right at that 3-month period, right at that 3-month goal. And then you would kind of stay generally between there and 3.5 months worth of reserves on the initial fund.
Okay, questions, anybody? Bear, you got anything? Okay, go.
I'm just gonna say there's a little bit of a mismatch between what you said on the planned spending, like the Walmart water line. I think you said ARPA, but it looks like we have it in the capital improvement fund. I don't know if that's something that we can move, but just make sure I heard you right, but you were saying ARPA, right, for the Walmart
It's
water
going to be
line?
funded through the ARPA.
Okay, so we need to make a change.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that it's going to be ARPA.
Okay, so then we'll need to move that. Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much.
Okay,
Thank you, Brady, and Randy and Dina. All right, so Christine's going to go ahead and get started on our regular budget. Mateo, can you use that for
Thank you, though. It's not mine. It's me. It's shopping, not mine.
Is it?
Good job. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I start the presentation, I just wanted to point out that when we began the budget process for this next fiscal year, we found that we had a deficit of $2.2 million. And that deficit what contributed to that deficit was tax revenue projections that were inflated. Restricted revenues were used to balance the budget. The license fee revenue line item was lump sum, and within there were restricted accounts, as well as there was budgets for donations and grants for a total of about $1.5 million being over budgeted. So when I came to staff and I explained to them that we were at a deficit of 2.2, they were real troopers, and we ended up cutting an incredible amount of items. The extensive cuts that took place, the majority of them were in the capital items, which was about $500,000. Contract services were cut by $345,000. Support services $222,000, and allowances by $100,000. I know a lot of you have noticed that we had to cut out the employee recognition. But that was only about $30,000. But that's pretty much where we were at a point that we had to cut items in order to balance the budget. So, and that said, the staff was amazing in helping to be sure that we were able to continue moving forward with the balanced budget. The highlights within the budget, I know you're all aware, but I'm going to go ahead and point them out prior to presenting the budget. We created a human resources department, and we moved the human resources manager from the finance department to her own department, which again is human resources, and then also added a part-time human resources assistant for her. Parks and Recreation added a full-time tech position with a herbicide
The
license. Thank you. The police department added a full-time CID officer, and with that position required a vehicle to be added. The fire department added another full-time firefighter, and water wastewater has a full-time water wastewater serviceman that's been added. If you don't have any questions about the beginning of it, we're going to go ahead and tab through to what is your page number 14. So just go down to the budgeted personnel positions, unless you want to go through every page.
Mr. Buck has a question.
Yes,
I do
sir.
have a question. You said our revenue that was coming in was not sufficient to meet our budget. Is that how I understood that correctly?
That would be correct, yes, sir.
Where was the deficit from? Can you attribute it to, did we screw up in setting the property tax rate for last year? And feel free to throw rocks.
The property tax rate being lowered by almost 4 cents, it's going to be a long-term effect for the city. But a lot of it was prior finance staff inflating projected revenues, as well as including restricted revenues again, that should never have been included in the general fund budget. So, for instance, the hotel motel tax revenue was in there. There was some ARPA revenue that was budgeted in the general fund. There was the PEG revenue, all the court revenues that are restricted to certain uses, they were in there. And then on top of that, the line item for licenses and permits was over projected by almost $700,000. I've looked back, I've not been able to determine what happened, but we were able to say, okay, well, this is where we're at. We need to start fresh and move forward from where we are. And hence the reason we had to make as many cuts as we did with what we needed.
Have you gone back to look at the discussions that we had about a year ago when we were setting the tax rate and we got the no new revenue rate from Dare County, because this is the final rules of all the taxable properties in Universal City, and then we set the rate based on the budget that was presented and approved. Where's the disconnect between, like, did people not pay their property taxes potentially? Is there some other type of shortfall? I'm trying to understand, like, where did we go wrong so that we potentially don't do that again?
I don't know if it was the tax rate, what was said as the tax rate was the problem, or what was actually put in as the budget. Because we put that we would receive approximately $10 million in tax revenue, but when I looked back, that was using a rate different than the 0.54. And I don't know why. And I feel bad that I don't know, but I honestly don't know why. Yes, sir.
I think there's a presentation issue though, because that 10 was designed to be the total tax levy,
Yes.
not just the M&O.
Right.
So if you take out the INS, I think that might make up the difference that you're looking for, because there's that transfer at the bottom of the general fund.
Well, no, I did check that. It's the 10 million, then we take the INS off, which I think was 1.65 approximately. That still left us, now that we are still off by about almost $500,000. And if I project it out properly, we might come under budget by about 300,000, but that's still more than 5% where you really want to be. You don't want to project more than 5% of what you receive. At least that's what I was always taught. Try to stay at 95% of what you should receive.
And back to Mr. Buck, so it wasn't necessarily just the ad valorem and the rate we set. So again, a big portion of it were restricted items, meaning it can only be used for something and nothing else. It was thrown into the general fund pool with the expectation that it could be used for anything when we really know it couldn't. So what we had to do this year is we took all those restricted items, we backed them out of the general fund, and we put them back into their own categories and said, don't touch it.
Except for those authorized purposes.
Except for those authorized purposes, of course.
Now, we did try to move some of the budgeted items to what could be used through those special funds. For instance, hotel motel, we can use part of that for advertising and marketing with the golf course. Then we have
Child safety,
which we can do a lot of the fire or police trainings that they have.
Heroes
Heroes
Camp,
Camp, thank you.
educational
Can be
things,
budgeted
open
through that.
houses where they invite public in. Yeah.
Court technology can pay for any items that the court needs that's computer-based or, I don't believe it can be used for software then. I think it has to be used for equipment. And then court tech and then court security would be cameras, any type of bulletproof screen they would need or something to that effect. So we tried to move those revenues out that we knew we could use for certain items, but the real problem is that it's been budgeted under the general fund. And when you take all of those out, you don't have enough revenue to meet what you've expected.
Suddenly we have a revenue shortfall.
Exactly.
Right.
Very well, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so where were we? Did anyone have any questions about the first few slides? Basically, it is our city manager's, our city manager's statement, and then organizational charts, and go to page 12.
You know, I think it would be interesting to go through the organizational charts just briefly so
Okay.
the audience can take a look at how it was structured.
So I didn't do the organizational chart, but I will do the best to go through it. Okay, so first we have mayor council, and mayor council oversees the judge, city attorney, city manager, and county health officer. And then I don't know if you can see it, but the next in the blue are all the department heads. So we have department services director, the librarian, human resources, finance director, municipal court, city clerk, public works director, police chief, fire chief, the Olympia Hills food and beverage director, Olympia Hills golf director, and economic development director. And then you go to the little green side. Maybe the answer a little bit. It's really hard to see.
And then I'll just summarize it. Then in the green, what we have is all of the direct reports. So that would be your captains, your lieutenants, your sergeants, your managers that would report to the specific department heads. I think what people will probably find more interesting is if we can skip to the page with the chart on it, whatever number that is.
Page.
Sorry, we have the numbers. Yeah, this one. This is what I'm talking about, yeah. Thank you. So this is actually the budgeted personnel positions for 2024. And you can see in the first column what we had for fiscal year 22, second column is 23, and then the last one is what is being proposed. Now, I believe we made some changes in this one since we had originally sent it out, yeah.
If you look under police, council, it's your page number 14, and under police admin, you'll have a 2, so we have 2 positions there. On your document, I think it says 3. And then one of those positions was actually the CID detective, so, I'm sorry, patrol officer? No, detective, which is increased by 1, so you have, that's the only change within that document.
Any questions on
Questions on this part? I just thought to give you an idea of how everything's all put together. Okay. Good.
If you go to the next page, and council is going to be your page number 15. Now, there was some question about the financial policies in the paragraph under budget administration. The second paragraph at the very bottom, I believe the sentence said that the city manager has the authority to move money. That has been changed, and it is now the city manager has authority to transfer any unencumbered appropriation balance or portion thereof from one department to another within the same fund in the manner provided by law. And then that's the only change on this document here.
So for those of us that are not accountants and don't do numbers very well, does that mean that Ms. Turner has the authority if, let's say, the library has an unfunded expense and the animal shelter has an excess amount of money, for instance, because those are both funded from the general revenue, she can allocate $20,000, let's say, from the animal shelter to the library in order to cover those expenses?
Yes, sir.
Very well, thank you.
That's correct. Then the next page that's had a change on it, and forgive me if I'm going too quickly, if you have questions about the other pages, please let me know. Page 18, Are you having issues with that? Okay, right there. On page 18, at the bottom, you'll see the last special revenue fund is the ARPA funds. We've included the venue tax fund after the discussion with council on the 5th of July. And what we'll do is we'll place the 2 cents or the portion of the sales tax that is venue tax in this fund, and a portion will go to the golf course, and then the other portion, which the council will select how it's going to be used each year. And it just has to stay within legally permissible uses for that venue tax. So that's the only change on that page. Then as we go forward, the finance department and I added information for the citizens of Universal City because we felt it would help them understand a little better what the departments are included in each fund. So right after the general fund.
It's got to put the dongle in the back. The keyboard.
So you're doing
No,
okay.
she's putting the dongle in the back of the keyboard so that we can use the mouse. It's faster than the mouse.
It seems faster. Okay, so in your document, you see the general fund, and then the next page, it just jumps into the summary. So what we did is we added on the next page. Okay. We added the departments that are included within the general fund, just for a little more transparency and a little more assistance for the citizens to be able to understand what departments are funded through the general fund monies. Then if you go to page 24 in your packet, this has been a change on this page here where it says, you see where it says grants, and then underneath it, other sources and uses. That's $550,000 that again on July 5th was allocated to the general fund from the venue tax. So right now we have a bottom line budget that is $550,000 in the green, I guess the best way to put it would be. So you have a surplus of $550,000 in the general fund at this time. I know it's been earmarked for, I believe, park improvements.
Well, as an offset for park improvements.
Okay.
So when we get to the parks budget, you'll see it's about 1.4 million. And the discussion we had with our bond attorneys last time was that the legally permissive uses, using their language, was for parks and parks improvements. So while it's showing as the 550 here and as in other sources, it will be used to offset the parks budget of 1.4 million. So at some point in the discussion this evening, we'll have a discussion with council on that $550,000. What general fund uses do you want to have happen with that $550,000? Is everybody following me? Councilmember Goolsby? Yes, he's shaking his head too. Head nodding is helpful, thank you.
Sorry, I seem to be the one with the most questions tonight. The 2022 to 2023 actual, what is the as of date for those figures? Because if it's like current, like a week ago, I'm a little concerned. If it's from the end of April, I'm a lot less concerned.
It's as of May 30th. Unfortunately, I don't know that everything has been posted. We're still trying to work through that.
We still have some accounts receivable, let's say.
I'm sorry, sir?
We still have some accounts receivable,
We
let's say.
still have some accounts receivable, and we could very well have some expenses that have not been reported, and some expenses that may have been reported into the wrong account. And those are things we're still working through. Hopefully we'll have that resolved before the end of this month. So when the quarterlies are presented in August, then you'll have a better idea of where we're actually at.
And then, of course, even when we get to the end of September, we're not going to get our September sales tax revenue until October, maybe the beginning of, maybe November, yeah.
Yeah.
November, okay. Good. Thank you.
No worry. So if you don't have any questions about the summary, then we're just going to go to your page 30, which was actually removed from the the budget because it was a repeated page. It was on page 30 and then you'll see it again on page 65. So, you want me to go through each of the departments individually for anyone that hasn't seen them, or is everyone pretty comfortable with what's in the departments?
That's for the revenues or the expenditures?
The expenses.
Then
Would
we're
that be a good
talking
time to
general
ask
fund,
We're speaking in general fund, right?
general fund.
Yeah.
Would that be a good time to maybe just say the department ask questions? As you
Sure,
go?
ask us questions.
Okay. I mean, I have one on administration, if that's where you want to start.
Sure.
On the, I guess the first one is the other contract services of 150,000. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, sir. Actually, after getting your question, looking into the account further, that's where they've been allocating the leases for the copiers. Last year, they included party audit fees in there for some reason, and a couple of other contracts, but the majority of it, almost $70,000, is for leasing of the copiers and toners and other items.
So what do you anticipate the rest of it being, the other 80 then?
I'm sorry, sir?
What do you anticipate the other 80 then being? 70s copiers, then what's the
Well,
other 80?
what I did was I used the actual from the prior year and just estimated it to be 150,000. And then with what they had budgeted for this fiscal year, it was my mistake for not looking back further to see exactly what it was. It could probably be closer to 100,000. But because it's historically been about 150 is what they budgeted, I mistakenly made the assumption that that was a good number. But then when you posed the question, I looked into it further and discovered that that's actually leased items is the majority of what's in there. So the other items are, they really shouldn't be expensed in there. Like I said, they had the audit budgeted somewhere else, but expensed in this line item. So that's one of the things we're trying to.
Are we leaving that here, or are we going to move that to the non-department?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, and what we'll do is the part that is the copiers will move to non-departmental either this fiscal year or next fiscal year, either way.
Okay.
So we'll get a better idea of what it actually is, yeah.
Any others before we proceed on? Yeah, that's all.
Administration.
Okay, so the next section is general services. And did anyone have questions about general services?
On the planning for the 200,000, so what is in that line item?
That would be a question for Michael.
That's for the comprehensive plan?
General services.
Or in development services, I'm so sorry.
General
development
services or development services?
Development, did you ask development or?
Okay, sorry. And when you're asking that question, do you happen to know what page it is on so the other council members can scroll there?
Sure.
35, thank you.
Hour 35?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
30.
It'll be,
There you go.
yeah, it'll be 34, I'm sorry.
That's it.
34, sorry. Forgot.
Under planning, so that is the comprehensive plan. Michael, you want to talk about that? Yeah. Here's one of the things that we realized after talking to a few of you and getting questions from other people is that maybe there might be a misunderstanding of what a comprehensive plan is. I know when we had our meeting on July 5th, Michael, you can load up your presentation. We went through the strategic portion or the strategic initiatives of the comprehensive plan, but that is a minuscule part of the comprehensive plan. The last time we started updating our entire comprehensive plan, and you're going to see all the components that it has, was we started on it in 2000. We did the zoning or the future land use plan in 2005. We did the zoning portion of it in 2007. And then we've added other portions of it as we went through those years. So what we have is that our entire comprehensive plan as one packet hasn't been updated for about 20 years. Now, we've updated the strategic initiatives about every 5 years at that point. And we are to the point now where we need to look at strategic initiatives as well. But part of the strategic initiatives is making sure that you have your understanding of your future vision of the city painted out. So when you're looking at your strategic initiatives, you can figure out what they're going to be and how you're going to prioritize them. So based on that conversation or conversations, I asked Michael to kind of go through and do a real quick presentation on everything that's in a comprehensive plan so that we can all be on the same talking points. Is that all right?
Good, sure.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
So I'll do this as quickly as possible. Please stop me if you have any questions. So what is a comprehensive plan? And Kim kind of just went through that. It officially establishes the goals, the policies, and the guidelines that the city would like to take. It's a long-range plan. And so when I mean long-range, that's really up to you as to whether it's 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. Different cities do different lengths of time. But it does help to identify the end date or the end year when we go through the upfront data analysis. Let's see, it provides direction for zoning. So that's a key component, is that we're unable legally to make certain changes to the zoning code, land use regulations, without direction from the comprehensive plan. So by way of example, a few years ago, we wanted to, because of the changing nature of e-commerce versus bricks and mortar, we wanted to try to accommodate some of the, not only the changing nature, but the requests that were coming from property owners, commercial property owners. So strip centers, they had a lot of vacancies. They wanted to get non-pure retail, so commercial services to go in some of those. And so what we wanted to do was, I did some research, comparative analysis across the country, what other towns were doing. And one of the ways in which they addressed the same issue was they allowed for a certain percentage, so between 25 and 35% of the commercial spaces available in that center to be non-pure retail. So an insurance company or a realtor. The remainder would have to be pure retail. So we went to our attorney, we drafted everything, went to the attorney, and the attorney said, no, we can't move forward because our comprehensive plan does not allow for you to do that. So at the time you guys update your comp plan, make sure that you have that discussion. If that's the way the council wants to move forward, then we need to include that in the comp plan. So that last bullet, that's the reason why it's important from a zoning standpoint, is to update the comp plan. So the authority, the source authority for comp plan comes from the local government code, these two sections. And I want to point out the first bullet that says that the city may adopt a comprehensive plan. It's not required. Certain states require a comp plan. They require a comp plan every certain number of years. Texas does not. So you don't have to update your comp plan if you don't want to. You don't even have to have a comprehensive plan. And then at the local level, the municipal code does address the comprehensive plan in a couple of sections. One is the Plan Commission has the authority to make a recommendation to City Council on how they would like to see the comp plan updated. And there's a definition in the subdivision code, strangely, that basically states that, again, it's for the growth, development, and aesthetics policies to be set. So what's in a comp plan? Now this is a lot of detail and it might be a little difficult to see all this, but I'm gonna step over here.
Yeah, you might have to blow it up. It's not
Can you-
hard to see. There we go, thank you.
So a comprehensive plan obviously has an introduction. Can I?
Yeah, you can, I think you can still move the screen. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so obviously these are the different components of a comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is exactly what it sounds like. It's comprehensive. It's a large document that establishes the path moving forward long term. And so you have your stated purpose and intent. You have a community profile, so your demographic and your market analyses. And so another, by way of example, a few years ago we did the Aviation District Master Plan. And as part of that, we did a demographic and market analysis. We also did the land use analysis for that area of town. So that would be a component. One of the things that we wanted to do was potentially roll that data set that the consultant provided for us during that, during the Aviation District Plan study. But it's been 3 years, over 3 years, and the data that they used is old. So we would have to do that again, update those that data set. In addition, we have a community outreach and process. I think this is what most people are interested in because this is the way that we conduct and that we involve the community to get their input as to how they would like to see the growth of the town take place. So stakeholder interviews, we would establish the number of stakeholders, who they are, business leaders, residents, Air Force Base most likely because they're impacted. We want to have a broad range of stakeholders that would provide their input. Community workshops, and so we could have an initial kickoff meeting, several meetings throughout the process to discuss the findings and get some feedback as to how we should move forward based on those findings. Have a project website that provides updates to the community as we go through the process, and then also an online questionnaire which the residents and anybody can access and submit. The account plan will also establish the vision, goals, and objectives of the plan, the land use and development plan. So this is, again, another land use analysis. This will help make changes to or identify any modifications that are needed to the FLUP, for the future land use plan. It'll establish land use policies for different types of uses, residential, commercial, industrial, as well as mixed use developments that we're seeing come through. And so you can identify a policy as to whether or not you want to change direction, modify that direction, or completely stop it. Aesthetic policies, architecture and urban design. This is very important for a lot of communities. Even though the state legislature took away a lot of our authority to dictate what type percentages for exterior materials, we have ways in which we can address aesthetics and how those different developments look. Commerce and employment policies, and then growth and annexation. So growth and annexation is important because we do have some large tracts that are still available, but also in the ETJ, we have a large number of tracts that could potentially come into the city through annexation. And we want to make sure that we have a policy moving forward to understand where the community wants to go with regard to those parcels outside of the city currently. Transportation mobility plan, this is very important because we have a roadway network. Randy has a capital improvement plan to make improvements to the existing network. If we have new developments come in, there's going to be new streets, new sidewalks, new curb and gutter, new utilities, infrastructure, water and sewer. That's going to have to be taken into account and set the policy as to see how we'd like that to move forward. And then we have parks, open space, environmental features. Recently, the Parks Committee did put together a plan, so we'll be able to roll that in and just make any small tweaks if needed based on current conditions. Community facilities and infrastructure, I lightly touched on this, but really, we have existing infrastructure. We need to make improvements. We need to budget for that. To what extent? For the different facilities that the city has. Village Hall, Public Works, Fire, Police, the Library, Animal Control, and the golf course. And then a technology plan. Everything that we see here today, do we need, or is it adequate? Do we need to fund it to increase accessibility for the public? GIS, that's an important thing. It's constantly evolving. Our ability to get data from the county, from different sources. Do we need to make an investment to enhance that ability? And then the tech channel is another example. Housing policy. A lot of comprehensive plans in different towns have a housing policy that the city council establishes and sets forward. It provides direction on, again, what types of developments you'd like to see, and then what types of redevelopments and efforts to kind of rehab or make outreach to, for example, some of the older apartment complexes in town. Economic development plan, this kind of covers touches on the majority of these topics. So an economic and fiscal analysis is important. Again, we have to set the baseline, understand what we have, and then get an idea of how much we want to spend and where we want to go. Part of that would be the vending tax discussion that we've been having, but we can set a policy through the comprehensive plan, and we can also set a policy for growth assistance. That means property acquisition, storefront improvement programs, any other types of incentives or programs that City Council is willing to provide for businesses in town. Image, identity, and community character plan. So really the branding of the city. A lot of towns think about, if they have some property or large tracts of land that are available for development, if they have certain areas in town, like we have the aviation district, we want to establish an identity for that area specifically, and what's the policy, what's the path forward to do that. Hazard mitigation plan, we all experienced the winter freeze for the last 2 years. It'd be important to have a policy in place, and we can roll certain emergency plans that we have in place now in other jurisdictions into that analysis. Then obviously stormwater management, understand our capacity, and then any mitigation strategies that would be needed. And then last but not least is what you're really familiar with, which is the strategic plan, that 10 to 15 pages, which identifies how you're going to implement the comprehensive plan over that course of time. So that's really what the comprehensive plan entails, what's inside the comp plan. And so who generates the comprehensive plan and how much does it cost? So it's by and large done by technical professionals, including planners, transportation planners, engineers, civil engineers, economists, architects, landscape architects, economic development professionals, and obviously legal review. The cost ranges between $200,000 and $325,000, and it ranges between 100 and 600 pages. And I did a cost comparison.
Yeah, question?
Sure.
Are you currently in contact with any of the firms that are potentially looking to offer to do our comprehensive plan for us?
No, I have not talked to a firm in the last year and a half about that, because we were thinking about this 2 years ago. We didn't move forward.
Right, this is
So-
a budgeted item that we had when COVID started, but because the initial required all of the public input and visioning sessions, we knew we couldn't do it. So we carried it forward, or excuse me, allocated or reallocated, I'm trying to get my finance words down here, for the following year, but we were still under COVID. And so this is kind of the year that it's opened up to us. I mean, we know generally who firms are that do these types of things, and
Yeah.
other cities have used.
So we'll put out a request for proposal if authorized to move forward, and we're going to get a lot of responses.
And what's the time frame from start to finish? Once we say company X, they bid, we accept their proposal, how long can we expect it to last before we have our comprehensive plan?
Sure, generally 6 to 12 months.
Good, thank you.
So here's a comparison. So the top two I think were important. So these are towns that have engaged and completed their comp plan in 2022 or earlier this year, or are currently in the process. They budgeted for it and they're in the process of selecting consultants. So Addison, Texas is about the same size as Universal City. They spent $325,000. Manor, Texas, which is about the same size, $318,000. And then you have the three below that. Canton, Texas, which is a much smaller community, they spent $150,000 on the low end. And so that just gives you an idea of what this costs.
Phil, has a question? Phil's got a question.
Yeah, on the list of priorities, we can piecemeal that too, right? If we want to just do a land use plan, we could.
Yeah, but then it wouldn't be a comprehensive plan. It would just be a land use plan.
Right, I understand that. But if you wanted to, let's say, update the zoning, you could say, let's just do a land use plan, we'll incorporate it in the document we already have, and that would get us through whatever zoning challenge that we're in.
Yeah, and so some communities do exactly what you're saying, is that they do a partial update to their comprehensive plan. And they target it specifically for something like that.
Okay, and then these cities are kind of fairly well spread out. I mean, I think Maynard's the closest one, and there's Oklahoma on there. Is there just because there's not very many that get a comprehensive plan, or is it hard to get the data?
So generally towns, and the ones that I found, because I tried to keep it local as I could, but I didn't find any that had done an update recently. And so these specifically, they generally did, the last time they did their comp plan was 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. That seemed to be the trend in Texas. And so I think because of the growth that's happening in this area and Texas in general, but the growth in the major metropolitan areas, is that they're all realizing they need to have policies in place to accommodate that growth.
So one more question for you. So that you mentioned zoning. What would be your other largest thing that you'd be hoping to get out of the plan?
Well, again, so the example that I provided for, because that will help us with the business community. It'll help the city itself. We won't have as many vacancies if we if we find a happy medium with, with regard to those non-pure retail commercial services. Other things, we can take a look at and we've done this in the past, but we can take another look at simple things in the bulk requirements of the zoning code. So your maximum lot coverage, should we increase that? Should we have a landscape component to our zoning code? Do we need to update our sign code? So those are things that the comp plan would give us direction on.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Chris.
Is your presentation done?
Yes, it is.
Oh, then I do have a question.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know if you had more slides, so I didn't want to okay, I'm gonna make sure I got this real clear. So, what we had before was a strategic plan.
Yes, the
Which is-
strategic initiatives from the comprehensive plan.
Okay, wait, hold on. Now I'm confused. So, have we had a comprehensive plan before, or we've never had a comprehensive plan?
So I think we had a few plans that had been put together for different purposes over the years, and we took the data from those various studies and created the strategic plan that you're familiar with.
Okay, so the strategic plan, which had a lot of the things that you mentioned, we did 5 years ago. Is that correct?
Yes,
Ish?
that's correct.
Okay, and how much did that plan cost
I don't know the answer.
from 5 years ago? Does anyone have the answer to that?
I don't know the actual cost.
Okay,
But remember that to get to the strategic plan, we still had to run the future land use plan and the zoning and a lot of the other studies that we did, the parks master plan, the stormwater plan. So we had those components together and they were used along with other data that we had to do the strategic plan. So the consultants that worked with us on the strategic plan would have used all the documents that we had in place at that time. We're saying now it's been 20 years since we updated major components of the comprehensive plan. To get more strategic initiatives for now and in the future, we probably need to update some of the data that's behind it.
okay. So a new firm would come in and they would do all of the things that you want to do. So instead of just a strategic plan, they would do a whole bunch of things that are much more than the strategic plan, is what we're saying?
Yes, and so you can decide though, as council, which of these, you don't have to do all of these. I'm saying that's a comprehensive plan.
Right, you're not gonna do the
Yeah.
parks plan.
No, I get it. I get what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
the parks is already in there, aviation's already in there. I understand that. So you'd be paying for the things that we don't necessarily didn't just do. Because we just did a parks plan, so you don't need
Right.
another parks plan. That's ridiculous. Okay, so, okay, all right. Okay, so then community outreach and processes. That firm decides on how we're gonna do those stakeholder interviews and community workshops and everything, or the city decides how we want to do input on
Well,
those?
it's a collaboration. I mean, they do this for a living, so they have a pretty good idea of the process and how to move forward, but obviously they work with the city. As if there's certain things that you would like, then yeah.
It would still be up to us to advertise it and provide the space and make sure that people are aware and how to get to the questionnaire. They give us a draft of the questionnaire.
Yeah, so
Say,
generally,
does this apply to our city or not? Can you word this differently?
for most planning exercises, that's the process that's followed
Okay.
across the board. And you can make tweaks. And if you're talking about the stakeholders, then you'll have input as to who those people are.
I just think it'd be nice, like, if we do community workshops, that anyone who's really passionate about parks could come in and give their idea for it, instead of just being like, oh, it can only be certain people. Like, I'd like to make sure that anyone who's interested in something has the opportunity to come, not just like certain people, because there's some people who are very passionate about, finance, and there's some people who are passionate about something else. It'd be nice if they could come to those meetings instead of being a chosen person,
So,
for lack of a better word.
Generally, the way a workshop works is you'll have different stations. So one station will be for parks, and the consultants and the city will have several representatives behind that table. And then anybody, with maps and whatever other data on boards. And so anybody from the public is welcome to come in and ask questions and give their feedback. And so that's how that works, because they'll take that information that they receive from those folks, and they'll kind of merge that with all of the baseline data that they've come up with to that point. And then they'll put together a path moving forward, and obviously you'll be able to vet that and say, well, we're not too comfortable with that, or yeah, we like that, let's move forward.
Okay. I
But you can't make everybody happy all the time. Let's
No, I agree. I just like, if we're announcing it to the public, that's my big thing. Like, if you care about parks and you want to be here and you want to give your input, I feel like you should have that opportunity if you want to go. Obviously, you're right, not everyone's going to go, and if they miss it and they got a hair appointment or something, that's on them. But just that we're opening it up so that is an option. Is
That's-
my only concern.
Yeah, the online is very helpful.
Yeah.
So one of my past
that's-
positions, I used to have to answer all the online questions, and that would take me a long time.
Okay. Okay.
Anybody else? On the
I
comprehensive?
hope that was helpful for everybody.
Well, that was good once you brought it along, glad. And that's, I think, why they anticipated that.
Thank you, Michael.
We have to explain
Oh,
what the
can
plan is
you,
all about.
potato back up?
In difference to the strategic objectives. Okay, you guys still want to continue to press on? You want to take a short break?
We're only in development services.
We can knock out probably 3 or 4 real quick.
Okay.
Smaller
Yeah, go ahead.
files.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
So the next department was human resources. Are there any questions about what was in human resources?
I'm sorry, were we under general services or development?
We were under
We were
development
under
services.
development
Services, I apologize, then
No,
I
that was my fault.
And in case you didn't know, they should be in alphabetical order.
They're in order by department.
Oh, that, they're in order by
Okay.
department number.
Now we're on
My
human
bad.
resources.
Then in that case, I do have a question for Mr. Casada about the development services. I saw that for third-party inspections, we budgeted $150,000 for the next year. I asked about this last year, but I can't remember exactly what your answer was. If we're paying $150,000 for for an outside party to come in and do inspections, could we not convert that $150,000 to another paid position so that perhaps while Jacqueline is doing plan reviews or something like that, there's like she has a deputy or something like that?
Okay, so, a couple of ways to answer that.
Yes, sir.
And,
Please the shortest version, not kidding.
okay, so what we did was we anticipated that. The true cost was $170,000 based on the last year.
For, I'm sorry, 170 that we paid for third-party services?
We anticipated for
Inspection?
2024, we were going to budget 170,000, but we worked to reduce that
Right,
by
so
20,000.
So what I did was I took the average, I took the last 12 months and took their invoices and the total divided by.
Sure.
So it came to $170,000, and that's what I was going to budget for. So obviously, as part of the discussion, we had to reduce some of our costs. So what we looked at was what inspections could Jacqueline perform that are not as time consuming. And so we came up with 3, possibly 4 different types of inspections: roofs, fences, flat work, and sheds. So that would mean that she would do approximately 475 additional inspections a year. And that would save the city approximately $21,000.
I think the real question is do we need a third-party inspection firm, or do we just need another person? And the short answer to that is, this is a very specific field and expertise. It is extremely difficult to find someone who can fill in that position.
And we tried to do this
Twice.
Yeah, we tried twice.
Get an employee in to get them to understand the position, the job, and the knowledge base that they have to have. And they can't pass the test. Now, it's not our test. These are actually licensed tests that they have to take in order to be inspectors. And it takes either a very quick mind and aptitude like Jacqueline, but there's not very many of her to be had, or you have to end up having a firm that has 5 or 6 people in it that have the expertise and do it for you. And so it was, even while we were training the staff members to do plan review and inspections, we still ended up having to use a third-party firm and pay the same amount that we're paying them. So at this point, it just makes more sense to use them and not worry about trying to get trained staff, because there's none to be found. And you can't do it in 6 short months. You're talking about 5 or 6 years worth of on-the-job experience, and sometimes you need that much just before you take the test.
Who's doing them in Selma? Could we poach somebody? Just kidding.
I'll say Bear has a question.
Bear has a question. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the answers here.
Go ahead,
Bear.
Bear.
All right, thank y'all. I would like to say that we really do need to look into another person like Jacqueline, maybe a half of Jacqueline, as far as the mental capacity is concerned, because while she's extremely impressive, she's also way above the board as far as what I see out there and everywhere else. I do feel like we're going to get ourselves in trouble if we don't take care of our businesses that are coming in and trying to build. And if we start hamstringing them, because, well, we've got to wait 2 weeks before we get our certificate of occupancy, that's not going to make us shine like we want to shine. So I would really ask that we push for something like this, another Jacqueline-esque person, or somebody that she can train up to do what we need them to do.
So, I'd just like to reiterate, thank you for that feedback. If you look at the job postings that are out there right now in the building world, there are probably 6 to a dozen building officials that are being solicited. They can't fill those positions because no one's qualified. So you want someone who has all the certifications, is not, they can hit the ground running. Yeah. What we tried to do last year was 2 things. One, we tried to hire someone that we could train. It didn't work out. It's much more difficult than I think most people anticipate. And then secondly, we tried to poach someone from the building side, meaning the builders, the home builders, right? Because they deal with building officials and inspectors every day. They have an understanding. They could probably get up to speed quicker. That's difficult to do because of the pay. And so while times are good, they're going to pay a lot more on the private side than what the city can pay.
Yeah. And to Bear's point, sorry, to Councilmember Goolsby's point, I know that there are people who are timing what days they're requesting their inspections because they know that Jacqueline will be doing plan review on that day. So they specifically try to time their inspection so that they can get that third-party inspector rather than Jacqueline. Because of the, and that's not a ding on Jacqueline. She's extremely proficient and extremely diligent in all the inspections that she's doing. But you know, we do run that risk, as Mr. Goolsby pointed out, that people are going to continue doing that.
Yeah, and the other component is plan review. So it's not just inspections, it's someone who is qualified to conduct the plan reviews that come across the desk. We have a lot of plan reviews, and it's difficult to find the time to sit down and actually concentrate for an hour. Sure. You have people coming through the door, asking questions about a fence, about a shed, about the deck they want to build by themselves. They argue with you that they don't want to get it stamped. You know, there's just a lot that goes on every day. And if we did have another employee, it would probably be very helpful. It's just costly.
Yes, sir.
That's the problem.
Okay.
So one of the things that we did do several years ago to try to help on the efficiency is we did add an admin person back there. So she is the one that is coordinating all the inspections and dealing with the third-party inspector and dealing with the contractors when they come in. The second thing that we did is that, and she's very good at it, and the second thing that we did is we went to online permits now, where I'm going to say the majority of our permits are coming, and online inspection requests. So all of that is happening quite quickly, and we have the same person coordinating that too. But now she is also sitting online with the contractors and saying, here's how you set up your account. Okay, you want to know if you passed your inspection? Well, you got the email that said you passed. They said, well, I want to see everything I passed. So now she's trying to help them navigate the online portal, which really does free Jacqueline up a lot to do the in-customer questions or the phone calls with the contractors and the plan review, which is a lot right now. So, you know, we are going through a slight growth phase, and we anticipate going through another one. So right. I think we've made some big strides, and I don't necessarily think even getting another half a Jacqueline is going to get us where we need to go.
Okay, Mayor Botem.
Okay.
There he is.
Mayor.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I know that, like, when we looked at the police, we have budgeted for X amount of people, but we actually have 3 less than that in the budget. So I guess part of me is can we talk about budgeting for that person so that that person shows up magically, just that we can snap them up? We could go poach somebody from someone.
So would that be in addition to the third party? I guess
That would be a great question to sit down and discuss as far as how many inspections is a third party group getting, where we could, if we doubled up Jacqueline, then, how many could we do in-house versus a third party?
Yeah, if we could have 2 Jacquelines, then we would obviously reduce the need for the third-party inspector. We would still like to have them in reserve for certain things.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, that would be the limit.
Well, does that 150 cover a second Jacqueline, and then whatever is left over from that make up the difference, or absolutely not? There's no way we could get a second Jacqueline in for that kind of money.
You can get a second Jacqueline in for that money for sure, but then you would eliminate the third party. So we couldn't cover both with the 150.
Okay, so Michael, this is your opportunity, Mr. Casada, this is your opportunity to say, I need more money for inspectors, and to tell the council that if you really, or if you're happy where you're at, then fantastic, but I'm not gonna face the wrath of Jacqueline because you didn't fight for it.
So I'm not satisfied where we're at because I hear it every day and I try to be as accommodating and streamline the process as much as possible for the end user, for the customer. And so it's every day it's a battle. I'm herding cats, trying to get everyone to finish their plan reviews, do the inspections, answer all the questions about why they failed or this or that. And so we just get stretched on a daily basis. And so, yes, we would need to have 1.5 Jacquelines. So $200,000 would be what I would request.
Fantastic, thank you for throwing that out there, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yes.
I was just going to say, from a succession planning point and also from unknown things happening to Jacqueline, I hate to have only that as our ace in our pocket. I mean, we're really leaving ourselves open if something happened or if she needed to leave, whatever, you don't know what happens in life, we'd really be stuck in a way that I think would incredibly bump up our third-party inspections while we were trying to figure out what do we fill, how do we find somebody to replace Jacqueline. So I think to the point of bumping that, I think that's a reasonable discussion to have.
Perhaps we could start the process of advertising for a position and see what's out there, right? Because there's little to no cost to advertise for the position and to see what qualified candidates might show up at our doorstep saying, hi, I'd like to inspect buildings in your city. Okay, well, what are your qualifications? Well, thank you for applying, I appreciate it. And then when it comes to January, when we look at rejiggering the budget process to rebalance some certain issues, right? Ms. Turner, we just talked about, Ms. Turner has the authority for reallocating funds within the general fund from point A to point B. So what do we think about announcing a position and seeing who shows up to apply?
I would advise you that, just like with a police officer, that, that person is mobile throughout the city. So it's not just a person. Now you always have to have a vehicle for them to ride around in, a computer to use, and a radio and things of that nature. So we would have to put that full cost together for you. I know Michael said $200,000. I don't know if that included vehicle or
So on the vehicle, yeah, I think we're okay on the vehicle. But the computer, and that would be an additional cost.
And do you have the office space back there?
And that's the other thing. We reconfigured the office space. I think we can find a spot. It'll be well worth the effort.
Again, you have to remember the whole idea for code compliance and a building official and a health official is that you don't want them in the office.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the mobile technology that they have is really key to keeping them out of the office so they can get their job done. Which gives them the access to SmartGov and Encode and their desktop and anything else that they need. So.
Okay, so what about concurrent spend from council that we move forward Michael's request, with Mr. Casada's request to up that inspection budget, the development services budget by another $50,000 so that he can have that $200,000 instead of just $150,000, and then we start potentially the process for looking for an additional inspector. Somebody that could be Jacqueline's deputy, but then also potentially follow in her footsteps as the years go by.
I was going to say, this has been an ongoing dilemma for the city for years that we've been looking at trying to get, there's just not those Jacquelines out there. So starting the process to be able to find one for the city would just be a win-win. I see where that's a no-brainer for me.
I'm open to it. I'm not a big fan of comprehensive plans. So I think there's some money there that we could reduce that and shift towards an employee if we go for that too.
Mr. Patrick?
Sure. Sorry, I'm with Councilman Vaughn. I'm not 100% for this comprehensive plan either. So if we could shift money, that'd be awesome. If we can't shift money from that, I'm still okay with funding it.
Can we up the development services budget by 50% in order to accommodate an additional, or start the search process for an additional inspector?
Right, we can start that understanding that even if we did have somebody, we would continue with our contract for our third-party
Yes, ma'am.
inspections. Because there's the waiting period, the ramp-up period, and then there's what we call sick claim and dumb period for when that means they're on vacation or out sick.
Right.
Okay.
But I think that I feel like that investment, even if it is an additional $50,000 towards having that fallback position, towards having a second inspector that will ultimately reduce the amount of third-party inspections that we have to do, and then also have that backup, God forbid that something happens to Jacqueline, that we do have that inspector on the employee payrolls to fill in her spot.
Right, because even if we hired an inspector, it doesn't mean that they're qualified to inspect everything.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what everybody needs to understand. Jacqueline is the chief building official, meaning she can do anything and everything. Other inspectors, like if you were in the city of San Antonio, some of them can only do HVAC, some of them can only do plumbing, and so we would have to figure out what those gaps are or those requests are that we would need a second person for and try to target it toward that.
Good.
Okay, everybody good with that?
Then is
Bump
everybody-
that up by 50,000.
Yep. So noted, thank you, Mr.
And then what about the comprehensive plan? Is the feeling that we'd like to proceed on what he presented, or?
Please go ahead.
No, you're first.
I believe yes. There's, at least in the military, we say that there's no operation without a plan. So it's very difficult to execute anything if we don't know how we're going to execute it. So I think for the price of as much as $350,000, knowing that we're going to have all this information and we're going to have everything spelled out with a lot of input from the council and from the residents of Universal City, that would go a long way towards shaping our vision for the future and would put in writing what council, what the city wants to see for the future, which makes it that much easier then going forward for us to execute those plans, to execute the budget process every year, so that we can look at that comprehensive plan. This is what we plan to do. Which of these steps are we going to accomplish this year? So I'm a fan of going forward with the comprehensive plan.
Can I suggest that we may take, we've got so many other things to look at in the budget, there may be some other areas we can look at where that deficit can be made up now and not just try to concentrate on the plan itself. And that may be the solution, but there are other things that are going to get presented. Maybe there's something else we can look at.
And I'm sorry, in transparency, so we anticipated that the comprehensive plan would be $250,000. But typically when we do the comprehensive plan, the Economic Development Corporation participates as well since there's a business component to it. So I have asked Kristen when she does her budget to have the discussion with the Economic Development Corporation about picking up the additional $50,000. Because there's a huge part of it that plays into their planning as well.
So let me get consensus then from council. You think we should continue with the $200,000 recommendation on the comprehensive plan at this point?
Yeah, as far as, and he said it very well, vision for the future. And I think with that we need that comprehensive plan. We've got, we've got the aviation district, we've got the golf course, our vision for the future. We're far behind with what we need as far as information, new information, and getting that. I think the comprehensive plan for the future is a must. So yes, I'm all for it.
I think part of it goes into the conversation that we've heard from some residents about transparency also. They're like, well, where do you come up with all of this stuff? And, I wasn't here, I didn't know about it, but it does give us a chance to start over with people who are currently living in the city and allow them to have the opportunity to give all the input that they think that they need and to watch the process go through all its various stages and to give their input. And I think it'll go toward a lot of buy-in on some of the things that we've been talking about that we're doing right now from the past comprehensive plan, because obviously some of the projects from the past comprehensive plan that we've completed are done. Some of them are in progress. I mean, we obviously need to continue on with that, but we are going to be asking them, hey, tell us what you want your city to look like in the future, how you want it to operate, and how you want your business mix to look, things of that nature.
I mean, yeah, I think that's my caveat. It's just that the residents are super involved if we're going to move forward with it, and that we're announcing these things and making sure we're putting out on social media and all of our other things, like here's the survey, please do it, like putting it out, how even like the email, the Blackboard Connect or whatever, like just making sure we're actually informing the residents, like you guys need to be a part of this, we're doing this now, like fill out this survey, I'll promote it like no other too. But I'm just saying, like, that would be, if we're gonna spend that much, I guess, yeah, that would be my hang up, is that it has to be that, because otherwise I don't think it's really worth it.
But there's surveys, and then there are the questionnaires, and then, there'll have to be some working group, because obviously the Planning and Zoning Commission is really the organization that's in charge of it, and you have to remember their residents as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the consultant will do this time, but I do know when we were working on the future land use plan and the zoning, in order to make sure that there was a fair representation of all of the groups that were in from the comprehensive plan, we had one separate group that was from Parks and Recreation, Planning and Zoning, Economic Development, Board of Adjustments. I think at that time we had our golf course committee, and then we had, the police group, I can't remember what they used to be called. So they made up a group too, and participated to make sure that there was fair representation from all of those organizations, because they all have a plan and carrying it out. And so that's the other way that we get, resident buy-in.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Patrick.
I will say Michael presented a lot more, there was a lot of things on that comprehensive plan that I hadn't thought about. So if we are approving this money, talking about leaving it in, when we go to execute and decide to go forward with a comprehensive plan, will we be able to talk about that a little bit further, what we want it to look like and what's included?
Yeah, we'll come back before the RFP is sent out and, broadcasted. We'll talk with council about what specific components you would like, what we recommend that you must have in there, and what other components that you think that you would like to see in there as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great. And because I know there was a housing policy, and I don't know if we have one that we feel like is comprehensive, and if we feel like that's lacking. You know what I mean? I would definitely like to see city input on that. And to Councilmember Bowman's point, I really would like to think through who participates and make sure that it's a good cross-section of the community.
Right, whatever guidance we get from you and from the staff is the guidance that goes out to the end consultant firm that you approve. So yeah, the better information we have to give them, the better job that they'll do for us.
Great, thank you.
So the consensus, let us proceed at the $200,000 level for that at this point. Barry, you okay with that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say I'm going to piggyback on that I would love to see some type of workshops for the different things that Mr. Casada was discussing, that there are workshops set aside. And I understand it's a logistical nightmare, but to be able to have people come in and walk through and get to talk to the consultants and have their voice heard one-on-one or as a group, I would much rather it was an open forum myself where people just kind of got to walk through and talk about it. But I believe that happened when we, with the Patrick Road improvements at one time. I would love to see that kind of format so people have that sense of ownership or at least input. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, I think you got your direction to press on there.
Got it, okay. So the next few departments really didn't have any changes. So I'm going to go through them. If you need me to stop, let me know, and I'll be happy to stop just in an interest of time.
Okay.
The Human Resources Department, again, we've moved the Human Resources Manager from Finance to her own department and added a part-time HR assistant position to that budget. The Finance Department didn't have any real changes except that we did reduce our travel expenses and training expenses. We're going to target web or online programs for training for this next fiscal year. Municipal Court didn't really have any changes to their budget either. Juvenile Court, and then we're to General Services. I know there were some questions for General Services. In General Services budget, we had to cut from that budget vehicles, as well as, I believe, lease purchase mobile equipment off of that budget. Approximately $250,000 had to be cut in order to balance the budget. So does anyone have questions about General Services?
Everybody okay with that?
General Services is a division of the Public Works Department. No, that's okay. I just want to make sure that Ms. Patrick and Ms. Bowman understand where they're located.
All right, everybody good?
Parks and Rec, again, they've added a full-time tech that has a herbicide license. And then that budget also, there were some items that had to be cut that were capital items. And that was approximately $75,000. I'm sorry, forgive me, that was, the Parks Improvements line item had to have $25,000 cut. And that was cut from Veterans and Red Horse Parks. The Police Department.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, please.
Sorry. Okay, so on the parks, I'm sorry, I got a lot of parks, so hold on.
Okay.
Let me go back. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so Parks Department, you've got your park improvements for $425.
Mm-hmm.
Randy, do you want to tell everyone what those two are identified for, or do you want me to just say what I know? Or I mean, it's your project, so yeah, you want to go over
Yeah,
those
so
two?
that's gonna be, we got one more swing that we're gonna be putting out there at Veterans Park. That was the one thing that we had to cut in this last, out of this budget year. So that's gonna finish out that swing over there. And then it's the improvements at Red Horse. We still have the playground next to the pavilion, that small, there's gonna be a small toddler area playground right there. It's to finish up the pavilion that we have there, and it's to add a small basketball court closer to the restroom over there. And so that will complete those improvements in that area.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. So I drove out there and for the Red Horse, and I looked at it, and I'm wondering, since there's already 2 playgrounds there, and we only have basically one dedicated basketball court, but you just said you're going to put another smaller court up there?
We just had a basketball goal in the parking lot. So once we redo that parking lot, it's not a basketball court, so we're moving it, building a court next to the restroom.
You're going to make a court?
We're going to make
Like a basketball court?
Yeah, dedicated court for it. Yes.
So I guess that's my question.
Randy, to speak up.
Yeah. So I guess that was my question was, did it really feel like there was a need for another playground instead of having like maybe a bigger dedicated basketball court that was covered in something a little bit more for the teenagers as opposed to a third playground when there's already 2 playgrounds there? Was the question that I received from quite a few residents is that an option?
Yeah, from everybody that rents the parks from us, I think from the neighborhood and everybody, the citizens, wanted some for the teenagers, so that's why we're adding the court there. But for the patrons and everybody that rents it, they want something right there next for their little ones. They don't want to have to go across watching over there, and that takes them away from parties and everything there too. So it's gonna be a small, it's not gonna be anything big like we've had at the other ones, but this will be just a smaller toddler area.
Okay. And then, the other question was, do you really feel like you need swings at Veterans Park? I also drove out there and looked at it, but a lot of residents asked for the $100,000 cost. Do you really feel like swings are a necessity at that park? As opposed to another project?
I think, you know, swings are popular at all parks. I mean, that's one of the things that, at all our parks. Parks, I have my Parks Commission here tonight. They've approved the plan that we have there. So again, it's gonna be a nice little setup that we have there. And it complements what we're putting in there. The only reason why we didn't do it this year is because we didn't have enough money to do it all. So yes, it's gonna be a complement to what we already have there.
Are they handicap or anything different swings, or are they just your regular run?
No, these will be where you have handicap, toddler, and the regular swings.
That's all I got, sorry. For that part. Does anyone else want to add to that? Yeah, I'll just check back.
For Parks and Rec section.
Yeah.
Just on the basketball court, is it full court, half court, or what do you?
Right now, it's designed for a full court with a fence on the low side. That way when the ball goes, it doesn't go off into the ditch.
Okay. We'll have a
Because because the terrain goes like this.
Yeah.
So we got to level the ground out, and plus it's going to be a drop off. That's why we're going to put a fence on that side of the court right there.
Is that most of the cost, do you think? It's about $325, right? Is that most of the cost?
No, let me get the breakdown. I got it combined between the. I don't have it broken down between the two, the playground and the court, but it's probably half of that cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still have more parks, I'm so sorry. Forgive me if I'm wrong, if this isn't under parks or it's under something else. One of the things was veterans trail lighting. Can you just tell me what kind of trail lighting that's gonna be? Is it like overhead, is it poles, is it ground lights?
It's LED trail bollard lights, so it's the ground ones that are only about this tall.
Okay. Are you concerned that people are gonna mess with those or break them or kick them or make them unusable and so it's not good?
I'm concerned about all my fixtures, everything in my parks, because even my pavilion lights, they break those.
Okay.
So I have to look every time even the restrooms that we buy, the fixtures that we have are, they're prison, the type that are designed for prisons and stuff like that. They gotta be indestructible as much as possible, so yeah.
We can use is industrial.
Really, really strong industrial, yes.
Okay.
But yes, nothing I find out is ever damage proof, so.
Okay. Is this also in parks? Because I'm so sorry, I'm
Yes.
not 100% sure, but is the UC Park and North Lake concept plans, is that in the parks budget as well? Am I in the right place? Okay, so can you go into detail? Are these concept plans just that, like, hey, we're gonna put this here, we're gonna put that there, or are these designs that include architecture and building materials and like all these details, or is it just like, hey, this is what we want to do in UC?
It's a schematic one-page design, really is what it is. So it gives you a layout that once I have the consultant on board, we get it designed, we take it to the Parks and Rec Commission, they review it. If there's edits with my designer, we make those edits, and that's typically what we build off of.
So does it say, like, is he doing architectural drawings? Like, it just seems like a very expensive cost, $150 and $145. So I'm trying to figure out, what are you getting for $150 and $145,000?
Where are you at?
That's where I was at. I might be in the wrong section.
Yeah.
I don't have my budget up, so.
Yeah, because the one that I have in here under contract services, basically is the trail lighting, obviously. But I have 8,100 in there for the master plan concept design for UC Park.
Okay, hold on, maybe I.
So she's under other contracting services, the 145,000, I'm sorry, Renee.
Yeah, that's where I just.
Yeah, when we talked, that's what I'm saying, I'm sorry.
145,000, can you explain to us what's in your other contract services for 145,000?
So 38.5 is for the trail lighting of veterans. I got
Okay.
9,800 for the grant application for our next trail grant. I have 8,100 for the master planning concept design for UC Park. 67,100 is for the UC Pavilion architecture design. And then we have 22,000 for the Red Horse Pavilion architecture design to make those improvements. That all adds up to the 145.5.
Okay, so I guess. Give me 2 seconds, I'm so sorry. Okay, so, oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so it was 379 was the other contract services, but you're saying, so.
379 wasn't in my budget. That's the one that we talked about.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm so sorry, because we had a meeting before without you. So I've got 379, I've got 145 for the UC Park, I've got 150 for the North Lake, and then, yeah.
The 150,000 was not from North Lake. That's what Councilmember Bond and I discussed earlier about
Okay.
these and copiers.
Oh, okay,
It
so
was-
that's not it. Okay,
No,
okay.
we
Okay,
apologize. That
so
was,
Lease and copier, okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
that's
I'm gonna
exactly
change
what
that
that
on my notes. Okay, so yours is just the 145,000 then, but you're saying it's not just for UC Park, you just gave me a list of things it was for.
right.
Okay, can you read that to me real quick again so I can write it down? Or just, how much was the park again?
Print it out.
Or yeah, can you just print it
Yeah,
out?
I can print it out.
Okay, can you do that for me? Okay, that way I have it as in my notes, okay, thank you. And then I have one more, I'm so sorry. Your herbicide person,
Yes.
what else do they do? Because I know it's probably not just spraying weeds, but you said they were also in the park, so what other job
So
titles do they
this
have?
past year, we hired an irrigation technician / park serviceman. So when he's not doing irrigation work, he's doing everything that requires the parks, mowing, trash, everything park maintenance. Same thing with this technician. We have a lot of mowing in parks, right?
Yeah.
So I need somebody with the expertise that knows how to do the ground maintenance, like Jeremy has in the golf course. I need these grounds on the baseball field, football fields, in our parks, in better shape than what they are. I need somebody with that knowledge and those license to get these grounds in better condition than what they are now.
Okay, but they're not just a herbicide person, they're not just going
No,
around
no,
spraying weeds all day,
they're
like
just
they're
having-
they're
they're-
doing like actual park duties.
Yeah, they'll be doing park duties when they're not actually doing the herbicide spray.
Perfect. Okay, that's all I had for parks.
Anyone else? Did we lose Mr. Goldsby, or did he just hold on?
You just turned off his camera.
Mr. Goldsby, do you want to weigh in? He must have had to take a little break. That's
It might
probably
be
a good
time to
idea.
Take a break now.
It's 6:45, let's take a short break and come back in and we'll get, pick up police from there. Can we roll it again?
Yes, sir.
Sam, are you ready?
I saw that. Oh, we roll it again? I'm ready to go? Yeah? Okay, all right. Let's reconvene. Thank you everyone for your patience. We'll need we had some really nice surprises for us there, especially Mr. Ballman, who gave us donuts. It's a budget workshop on it. All different colors and stuff. It was very nice. Thank you. All right, let's press on. I think our next item is police.
Yes, sir, police. Again, we have a full-time CID officer that's been, position has been added, as well as a vehicle for the CID officer. But before we go any further, I just want to make sure that council understands that all of the departments made significant cuts to their budget. Just so that you're aware that all departments across the board really had to come back in order to get us to where we're at. So within the
So what we'll do with that is when we get to the end of the discussion, remember we kind of moved some money around, then at the end we'll have the discussion with you on if the revenues work out the way that we anticipate they do, what would you like us to see put back in? Thank you.
Within the police department, again, they had many line items that were cut. but nothing that stood out is significant, with the exception of, I think, bikes for officers.
Yeah, they needed patrol bikes for their officers. I think, Chief Mahalski, you currently have bicycles.
The bikes that we have are very outdated and old.
So that was the one capital item that we did cut from their budget.
So are there any questions on the police budget?
Okay. I'm sorry, just real quickly. How much do we use those bikes? Just on a daily basis?
It's actually been quite a while since we've had anybody on bike patrol. It's something that we like to use to send out into the communities. We'll send an officer out in a car or in a pickup truck with a bicycle where they can get out and ride through apartment complexes and places that are difficult to get into with your patrol vehicle so that we can.
Can you go up to the?
Yes.
Because it's being recorded so they'll be able to hear you.
So that we can get into areas where it's not as easy or simple to get into or it's quick to get in and out of if a call comes out because they are in your patrol car. So if they're out on bike patrol and they get a call that comes out of another area of town, they're quickly able to get back in their car, load the bicycle up and go. So we would have to get a couple new officers trained up in bikes, but we do have some bike patrol certified officers so we can put them on our book.
So,
By the way, everybody, this is Chief Mahalski.
hi, Chief Mahalski.
I know some of you know him, some of you don't.
To follow up on that, so because the bikes being outdated, are we not using as much as you would like to, or utilizing, you would like to utilize them more?
That's correct. They're basically broken down to the point it's going to cost more to repair anything that we have. I think the last time we bought bicycles was probably 6 to 7 years ago. So that they're so broke down at this point that it's better to buy new ones and start fresh than it is to try to repair and patch these back together to get the bike program functioning like it should be.
And see, that's me, I'm getting old, so it's like, I remember the bikes, I'm like, those are really nice bikes, but it was probably 5 years ago that I saw them, so.
It's been a while.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Chief Mahalski, I'd just like to say, is it a requirement of the UCPD leadership that you have to talk about 100 miles an hour? I'm just asking, because I gotta tell you, I was gonna say something like you're gonna have to speed it up to keep up with Chief Siemens, so, but you're doing very well to keep up. Maybe you got about 30 words per minute to go before you're at his level. Are you okay with your budget? I've always said that police and fire, first responders have to be the priority for our city, and if we're gonna make any cuts anywhere, I would like to avoid having to make those with police and fire, especially if it's going to potentially result in a compromise or a reduction in the level of safety for our residents. So I want to hear directly from you that you and Chief Siemens and the other leadership over at the UCPD are okay with these cuts that you guys have had to make.
There were areas that were cut that we would like to have. The CE position was extremely critical to us.
Which one?
The investigator position, the new position for us.
And that was cut?
No, that was cut in as well.
Okay.
There were areas that were cut. That was the main thing that we really were hoping to get in this year. So we're happy with that. We can work within what we need to work within, but yeah, there's always things that we can use.
Okay, do you have some items on the wish list that's going to come towards the end of the discussion for what you would like to have if the money was available?
There was added back, I think, our other equipment line that was cut.
Another equipment line?
Other equipment. That was cut by a little bit. That would be one area that we would like to have.
That included the bikes?
That included the bicycles.
That included the bikes. There it was, other equipment, oh, that was other equipment and maintenance. Oh, yeah, other equipment maintenance. Okay. Good.
Right there. See where it says 35,000?
I do.
That's where the bikes were cut from.
Okay. And it was 35,000 last year, but thus far this year we're at 74.
Yeah, some of that 74,000 came from vehicles from the expense that went up and upfitting the vehicles, putting new lights in the some money came out of that line item this year that next year would go into the new vehicles. It would come out of the vehicles line item, so it wouldn't be as high. I don't think we were asking for 74,000 this year. It was 55. That would be the area we'd like to be at now.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
One other question. Going back to the other items, that the bicycles were part of the other items. How big is the list of the other items? How big is the list of the other items?
Well, other equipment, there's a lot of things that fall into that. Are you asking how much the increase, how much was cut?
We cut 20,000 from it.
I'll make it easy.
20,000 was the bicycles.
Right. 20,000 was bicycles?
Yes,
Specifically?
sir.
That's good enough, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please, vote your stop, number 2 step there. Okay.
So the fire department added a firefighter to the budget. Now, there were some cuts here as well. The majority of those cuts were, go ahead. No, you go ahead. You know where they are.
I do.
He knows.
He knows.
So thank you. Yes, I just want to say that Christine has done a great job of working with us on this budget, and obviously it's really hard. The cuts that we had to take we cut a lot of our wants out of the budget, but we have a lot of needs. Or I'm sorry, we cut up all of our wants out of the budget, but some of the needs that we have are contractual agreements, monthly bills, things that we pay. We took a cut in that, and I'm like, gosh, how are we going to continue to pay for our station alert and things like that? So obviously, there's a few categories if we're going to have to figure out a way to get creative and use it on operating supplies or whatever. But those are bills that have to be paid every month. And one of the big things we took a cut on, obviously, is employee recognition. Our guys work really hard for us, and it's hard when we have to cut employee recognition, but we completely understand. We're all team players, and if we got to make cuts, we're going to do that. So that was an area that we took the decrease as well as our training. We've experienced we have 35-year captains that are telling us that they're going to retire here very shortly, and we have a lot of young guys that we're trying to get them to the next level to be able to step into those roles. So we're constantly trying to send them to leadership training and development and set the stage and make sure they're ready for that next step in their career. And we had to cut, training, but we're willing to do what's necessary to balance that budget. And Christine has been, this is new to me as well. This is my first budget. And she's like, just relax, we'll be okay. We're going to get through this.
We'll get through it together.
We're going to get through it together. And she's been phenomenal in helping us get there. And then obviously, the physicals that we've been doing have been great, for the firefighters. We had to take a small cut in that as well. But
I think that was related to the x-rays though.
it was.
Yeah, they are.
We ended up, so every other year we do the chest x-rays. So we add the chest x-rays. We didn't feel we need to do them every year, so we would only do it every other year. And this coming up was supposed to be the year that we factored in the chest x-rays. And we cut that out of the budget so we could balance. But we did not cut the actual physicals that we continued to do.
But we've also discussed the possibility of, if necessary, because it's within general fund,
Yes.
using part of the finance budget that we have a little bit of extra in order to help some of the other departments. So that's kind of on the back burner. We're hoping we don't have to do that because we can use the money as well. But if that's what it comes to, obviously we want to support the departments that need it more than we do.
And then the other thing that we discussed when we were having our insurance meeting is that, we provide everybody insurance. And so maybe one of the things that they need to do as part of their regular checkup with their doctor, rather than relying on the city to do it, is to actually just go and get a check that they're using their insurance, rather than us paying for it separately.
Well, Chief Mahosky made a really good point. So that legislative bill just got signed in on police and fire. Outside of the normal go to your doctor and get a physical. The cities who are not currently doing what we're doing are now going to be held responsible. They have to comply within this year to start doing these annual wellness physicals where they send them out. They get the cancer screening as well as the chest x-rays. And they're going to all be given a short time to do that. And it's an unfunded mandate that they just passed into law that a lot of cities are not doing it. And they're going to have to comply with this as well.
Yes, Ms. Moore?
So I have 2 questions for you. When I met you, when I did my tour, you did mention a fire truck. Are we not funding a fire truck now?
So that's actually not in our line item budget. Those are what we consider as capital expenditures. So they're different. But yes, we still have the trucks in there, but they're under capital outlay.
Right,
Did
so
I miss
we're,
it?
yeah, we're gonna talk a lot about this on the 18th, so we can talk about it generally now. So what Chief Byrne and his staff have been doing is going out and pricing the vehicles. If I remember, it's a ladder and a pumper. And we've been looking at the age and the repair costs and the downtime for those vehicles to identify if in fact we do need to start planning for a replacement. And yes, we do. And so we have the price, pumper truck is about 1.4 million and the aerial is about 1.7. And that includes some of the outfitting and other things that they need for those. Now, in fire truck replacement has changed a little bit because of the supply and demand. So what the companies do that make trucks now, what they're doing is they're suggesting that you start working on your new trucks 3 years in advance because that's how long it will take to get one. And so what they're doing is if you place your order in now, they will give you a discount on your vehicle. And if you place your order in for 2 of the vehicles, then they will give you a discount for that. So it's about $35,000 discount for one, and it's about a $65,000 discount if you put the order in for 2. And the question is why would we do 2? Well, we know that one is due to be replaced next year, but we know it's going to be a couple of years. Well, the year after that, the next one is already due, so we kind of have to get on the list in order to get the vehicles ready for when we need them. One of the things that the company does ask us to do, which I'm opposed to, is they want all of the money up front, and I think that we've kind of made it clear to them that no, that's not going to be our policy. We understand putting the down payment, 50% down, but not the full amount. So we know that, you know, we're
I
looking
had
at,
revised that as well to
Thank
do which was the 50% down. And
yes,
we have 3 years to budget for the remainder of those costs, because if we order today, and actually we don't have a year, you were saying we had a year, so our Bravo is a 2006, and because of that 3-year delay of ordering, that puts it coming in when this apparatus is supposed to be coming offline. It reaches its 20-year mark. And then the ladder truck is actually a 2008, and it'll come off a year later. But because we're at a 3-year deficit to order, if we waited and ordered that at that time, now we're going to be behind the curve before it comes in, and we'll actually be without a ladder that's in service. So that's where it's the delay.
sorry, give me a second. So remember, one of the things that we had talked about is that there was a due from the golf venue tax to the general fund. And I told you that we would come back with some recommendations for you for that. So when we talk about this again on the 18th of July, our recommendation is the money that the venue tax owes to the general fund, which we believe is still about 1.9 million. You could use that as your down payment, and then that gives us 3 years to figure out where your other 1.5 million comes from. Or you can just postpone, or you can go out for tax notes or certificates of obligations. You have all of those options available to you, but that's the discussion that we'll be having on the 18th.
I'm so lost. I'm so sorry. I understand what you're saying. I truly don't. So it's gonna be in the budget, but it's not in the budget because we're getting 1.9 million. Someone break this down to me.
It's actually like a prepayment. So we'll have the money, we'll make the prepayment to the fire truck. It's not really, it's not in the budget currently, but once we speak next week, we'll decide what we need to do as far as whether or not we need to place the line item in the budget as an expenditure, but it's still going to be a prepayment on the vehicle. So it won't appear as an expenditure, it'll appear as a prepayment.
I'll get it, but that's okay. Someone else can, yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll catch up. Okay. The only other question
I want to make sure. If you're not, I want to see is everybody else following what we're saying?
Okay.
Well, we can.
It's fine. We can touch base
No,
later.
right, yeah, and it's a council decision that you're going to have to make is how are you going to fund these? We're going to make we're looking at several pathways to get there. And when we get to the 18th, we'll be having a lot of discussion.
Okay.
Generally, the three options that you have, tax notes, certificate of occupancy, not certificate of occupancy, certificates of obligation, oh well. Or you take the revenue that you're going to get from the venue tax, what it owes the city, 1.9 million, and you use that as the down payment. In other words, you cash flow it.
Okay,
Cash flow it or finance it, what do you want to do? That's what we're going to ask you.
okay. I'll do my research before then.
Got it.
I got one more question for you, Fire
Go
Chief.
ahead.
I know it seems like we're kind of pushy on this, but
No, I
They
think you
told
need it. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
figure out where the money's coming from.
they told
That's-
us
that's
these
it.
things are, they go up and they're hit another. So if we don't make a decision, what did they say, Kim, by the
28th of July.
it goes up another 7%. And when we're talking about
Yeah.
1.4 and 1.7, 7% is a.
I want to fund it 100%. I was just trying to
No,
figure
absolutely.
out where
We're not
we're
asking
at.
to do
So I was just trying to figure out, yeah, okay. But I do have one more question for you. So this you already answered me personally, but I'm going to ask for everyone in the audience who would question. I got a lot of questions concerning it. How did you get to needing 7-man shifts? Because I was told that once you have this guy, you guys will have 7-man shifts and you're good for quite a while.
Yeah, go ahead.
So how did you get to 7-man shifts?
So we're following, obviously, I've been the chief for the last, 3 months, 4 months. I was the assistant chief before that, but I've been along Manny when he was here, and we were following the comprehensive plan. And our predecessor beforehand followed that comprehensive plan, which they had been asking for years of saying, hey, we need to get to these firefighters, and they were trying to get to 9. Well, it wasn't until 2 years ago, when Ms. Turner came in, we developed that plan to try to meet the comprehensive plan. They were asking for 3 per shift in the comprehensive plan, and we said, let's try this. We bring in 1 this year, 1 next year, and then this is that final remainder, the last one, to get us to 7 per shift. And we showed the management of the department how we could save on. Our guys have a built-in overtime. It's a natural overtime they're built in because of the 48-hour 96. But we took out that overtime and just that additional because of the 5-man minimum staffing that I explained to y'all. And the 5-man minimum staffing that's that minimum number that we can operate to enter into an IDLH structure. So if we get to a residence and we determine that it's on fire and we need to put a crew inside to perform a rescue, I can't do that without having the bare minimum, which is 2 outside, 2 inside, 1 running the engine, and 1 running the man. So there's
2 left here.
And 2 left here to copy the second call, because 23% of the time when I run a report, we're actually on a call, we get another call. And that's a significant number. So we have to have that manpower split up under these calls. And we dropped our overtime rate, and I had run a report before we came, anticipating that you would ask that. So when we met with CM, she gave us that firefighter 2 years ago, which would have been, we added 1 in 2020. On our additional overtime hours, we were at 3,037 hours overtime that year. We added that additional firefighter and we cut it to 2,037. The next year, we were at 2628 in overtime. And in 2023, as of right now, we're at 1609. So that was with the built-in overtime. Now, if I take the built-in overtime out of that, in 2020, we were at 1,094. 2021 was 2,744. We also have to remember that was the snowstorm and COVID. And then 2022, we dropped it to 1,447. And this year, we ran the report and we were at 488 hours.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, having an additional firefighter certainly is making a difference economically for the city and providing a safety factor.
It has been by far paying for that firefighter over and over.
Awesome. Thank you so much for indulging me.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Just, this is that.
I know that when I talked with Kim and Christine, we talked about the maintenance on the fire trucks, and it has to be done by a certified person and she asked you to run the numbers on what kind of money. That's all money that nobody in Randy's area can help with because they don't have that certification. So you have to call out and kind of get in line with all of San Antonio. How much money are you spending on that?
I didn't bring those numbers, I sent it.
I have it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I sent them over and I didn't bring them.
And then the next page is one.
So we use Alamo apparatus, which is that they have to be EVO technicians, which are those emergency vehicle apparatus techs. So the difference is we can't just take fire trucks to a general mechanic who's a diesel mechanic and allow them to work on the braking systems, the fire trucks, so we have to take it to that specialized, and that, as you said, they're backlogged just like everybody else. So our apparatus sometimes is out of service for a long time. As the apparatuses age, they tend to seem to break it down a little more than normal too. But in 2023, we just tried to run that routine maintenance as well as some of the large service items that we were doing. 2022, which was Alamo apparatus with our Evo, $26,777 we paid just to fire rescue. Cummings, we had turbo issues because of the aging of the truck, was $16,000. The brake job on the truck at Southwest Brake was $4,730. Blue Bonnet routine maintenance, $2,399. And then Southern Tire Mart, we just had to replace the tires on it because they were cracking, was $900. And that was in 2022. 2023, we generally hold off on the PMs till almost to the end of that budget cycle. So we're actually just now starting to rotate for 2023 and starting to get those apparatus in for PM. So we had some breakdowns and mechanical failures and out of service, and we're at 34,000 right now for this year in just in the breakdowns and maintenance of the truck being out of service. So.
Thank you. And how much time do you think, on average, that your vehicles are down waiting to get in the queue? Do you have any idea?
Other direction. It's in there.
Is it?
The page that you sent me, I can read your hours to days.
There it is. Great. So if we break it down, so 2023, the breakdown was 38 days. That was on our main engine. Our backup engine, which is our Bravo, was down 54 days this year. Truck, which is our ladder truck, was down 162 days this year. Rescue, which is our fast attack EMS call type vehicle, was down 27 days, which is actually currently out of service and it's in the Broncos. It's been down that's not including the last 6 days that it's been at Lubon in the Broncos. So you can add 6 more to that 27.
Maybe explain the process that you go through when you have one vehicle that's down.
So I guess kind of the process would be we get that question a lot. Why do you have to have 2 pumper trucks? Well, when one pumper truck goes down, that's the only truck that has the water capability, has the attack lines, allows us to make entry. It's what we were fighting fire with yesterday. So when that primary engine's down and it's out of service, we have to have another engine that we can move that rescue equipment over, respond to major accidents, house fires, vehicle fires. They have a pumper capability, 1,200. They have ladders on them. The same with the ladder truck. It has special functions and capabilities that we have to have that ladder truck to. If we have a fire inside of the town place suites that we have down there on 35, we have to perform a rescue. We have to do with that aerial truck. We have to put that ladder on the side of the building, and we have to go through the side. So when you need a ladder truck, you need a ladder truck. When you need an engine, you need an engine. Case in point, why we have a primary and a backup. And we follow NFPA standard. We like to keep that apparatus as a front line for about 10 years. It's good for a 20-year service, but we keep it front line for 10, and then NFPA says you rotate it for that following remainder 10 to its backup engine. and then we run it, and then we replace it with a primary engine. So, and that's how we rotate that cycle, to try to rotate them out after 20.
And when we sell a secondary vehicle, we typically will sell it to a much smaller city than ours that needs, sometimes unfortunately it is their primary vehicle and sometimes it becomes their secondary vehicle. And then we take the monies that we receive from that and it goes towards the debt on the new fire trucks.
Absolutely. And we can sell those a lot of times to the volunteer departments out in the rural communities who they're not by law held to NFPA standards and TCFP standards and all of the standards that we're faced with our gear and other things. And a volunteer, they're glad to have that apparatus and they'll use it. So.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I was primarily just doing some digging, so when Randy talks about, when Randy gets up, I had some questions for him, but I needed this.
Did I set the stage for that?
You did, you set it up nicely, thank you.
Anything else for the fire department?
Good on fire now, everybody?
I'm good.
Okay, great, let's move on.
Thank you, guys.
So vehicle maintenance is next.
Now we're on the right.
Did you want to talk about anything, Randy?
It's pretty much in line what we had last year, other than, the cuts that were part of this one.
So in this particular one, we cut the diesel mechanic.
Yeah, I think the biggest cut was the diesel mechanic.
Exactly, what Ms. Fitzpatrick was getting.
Yes, and that mechanic we put in there was for the specialty that's required to work on these fire trucks. But he's not the only ones that have, they have to be certified to work on those trucks. But at the same time, it was specified as a diesel mechanic because all his trucks are pretty much diesel. But in the public works field, we got lots of diesel. All my tractors, now that we got all the generators throughout the city, we got a lot of diesel equipment, and that's what we lack. I got 2 very good mechanics and 1 part-time mechanic. And I've had 2 mechanics, not I personally, but I've had 2 mechanics since I've been here since 1990. In 1980, there's still 2 mechanics. So today we got 2 mechanics plus I have 1. So our city has grown with equipment and stuff like that. But seeing that the troubles that fire's having with their trucks being in queue, he's looking for relief on that. If we can have a mechanic down there that can expedite and get his equipment back on the street faster, that's kind of where we were talking. I don't know where so Todd and I were talking on how we can, come together and try to fulfill both our needs and stuff like that. So, but unfortunately, that was a position that was cut for us.
Oh, cry me a river.
Yeah. I gotta sell it like they sell it.
I just want to explain why we cut staffing first, because the monies that we're pulling over, the $550,000, you can say, oh, well, yeah, let's add this person and add this person in. When you add that person in, you never get rid of the expense, and it does take your general overhead and make it very high. And so we have to be sensitive to that, because when we have too much staff, then that means we don't necessarily have the revenue that we need for capital improvements and capital purchases. So there is a balancing act. So yes, I agree we need a diesel mechanic. It's just that, sometimes you have to cut something. And when we were cutting salaries, we hadn't even discussed at that point with the council about the venue tax and what was going to be done with that. So that is 2 reasons why that position was cut, along with some of the other positions. But great crying job of it.
Okay.
I understand, I'm sorry. I understand why that was a position that cut, and also because Randy's area is one of the largest, and he can afford to lose that position as well. I just think it is an area that we need to be sensitive to, that there is a benefit to 2 different departments, both fire and public works, which I would also say are part of our first responders, because they are on call 24 hours, 7 days a week, for all of the utility work that needs to be done. So I just think it's an area of opportunity that we're sensitive to, that if there's the ability to put that money back in and fund that position potentially, that we consider it. I don't know that it's something that we can look at, but it's just, I do think it brings value to a couple of different departments in a couple of different ways.
Randy, does water have equipment that's diesel? I know you have the generators, but you have.
All our backwards.
She's asking if the
Well,
water and sewer
couldn't we
department have
figure out a
diesel
way
vehicles
to-
as well.
Maybe 50, 25, 25, something to that effect?
We can look into it.
So repeat what you said,
I'm sorry.
Council.
Forgive me. I had asked Randy, Randy, whether or not the water department had enough diesel equipment that we could possibly fund half out of water and then 25 out of, for instance, fire or vehicle maintenance, something to that effect. But again, as Ms. Turner mentioned, we have to consider the fact that this is an ongoing expense and we would have to find funding for it for ever. So that was my question to her.
Yes, Paul?
Just real quickly, and it's a small expenditure, but and it's sitting right there, that's why I'm asking now. The memberships and subscriptions, what is going up another over $6,000? That's proposed. From 2023 it was 6,000.
That's actually, it's 10,000.
It was 10,900 in 2023, and thus far he's spent 6,000. So it's going up by
2,000.
It's going up by 2,000.
Okay, I read that wrong, so it's not as bad as I thought. Yeah, then never mind, it's very small, so.
So then we move on
Do we
to
have a,
animal care, or I'm sorry, animal shelter. And out of animal shelter's budget, there was a vehicle that was cut. They were requesting a F-150 pickup truck. That's really the only thing within the animal shelter that was cut.
Anybody? Yes, Mr. Buck?
Would that have been a replacement vehicle or a new vehicle?
Then a replacement vehicle. They have a hand-me-down on the truck that's down there now.
Do you have ages by any chance? Are they past their life cycle, anything like that? Or, do we risk not being able to respond to a resident complaint or something like that?
No, pretty much all the vehicles in all the departments on the general fund side were cut. But we do, it's part of our vehicle replacement program. So what happens when they get cut, I have to roll them over into the next year. So we just leave it that. So that's what's going to happen. But I don't have my year on this one. But the one that they have down there.
That was 2008.
2008.
Anything else?
A lot of times when we're doing budget, one of the questions that gets asked the various departments is, do you want equipment or do you want personnel? And they have to make that choice because, you can't have everything. It would be nice if we could have everything. But yeah, sometimes we have to make those choices.
Okay. Great. All right, let's move on to the library then.
Library, yes, sir. The library had to have items cut. One of the most significant items was, excuse me, Christina, I don't know what it's called. The
Door counter.
Door counter.
Security gate.
It was our, it's kind of a door counter, it's our security. It's the, for books to go in and out. So if people don't check out their items, the security gates would go off and catch it. And those haven't been in operation for a couple of years now.
So if you've gone into the library, once you get past the foyer, you have 2 bars on the side and 1 in the middle. And people are passing through there, and it's counting the number of people, which is important for when they close, because they need to know how many. Plus, for their annual report they have to give to the Texas Library Association, they have to know how many visits they have. But if somebody happens to walk out with a book on the other side when they're going out, just like it would at a retail store when they have those little nasty tags on it, the ladies know what I'm talking about, the alarm goes off, and that does, it alerts them that in fact somebody's walking out with checking books. So they have two security gates, one at the back door, which is over by the children's area, And then they have the main entrance where I guess predominantly everybody is coming in and out. And I can't remember if we cut both of those gates or we just cut your budget in half, so you just changed out one. Cut all. And that amount was.
What's your current loss of books? And I know you can probably only give an estimate, but how many books do you think you lose? Or we'll just call them lost since I don't wish to imply anything. How many books do you think get lost every year?
Since I've been here, I did have a report that I looked into previous my predecessor. And according to that, from people who had never brought back materials or that went into the legal notification status, it was over $40,000. So now that we have more business, more patrons coming in with our summer reading, the last time I looked for registrants, we had over 400 people registered to do the program. And then of course our kickoff, we had over 350 come out to that. We have a significant increase now. So I would say it's pretty significant since that report has come out.
And to be more specific, rather than talk about people who check out a book and then don't bring it back, how many people would you say inadvertently walk out of the library without having checked out the book?
It's hard to tell. We have sometimes one circulation clerk at the desk and we're helping somebody. We have volunteers and not everybody can catch somebody. We're helping somebody with a card and you can just sneak in and out. It's really, really hard to tell sometimes if you're not sitting right there and watching people come in and out.
Sure.
So.
Are any of those book counters on our wish list at the end?
Yeah, everything's on the wish list at the end, and we're looking at our notes. We didn't cut the entire security budget. We only cut half of it out.
We kept the front door.
We kept the front door and eliminated the back door.
Okay. So
yeah,
in my version, I had enough just to cover all the expenses that I needed.
Right, but that was for the front and the back.
right?
And we just cut part of the back door.
That's what we thought was cut, but I can look back to be sure.
Okay.
That's what it was, because I honestly wasn't now.
We believe we only cut for the back door.
Right.
Our thinking was that not very many people actually go in and out because they have to go through the patio.
That's true.
And so they're going through a double set of doors to get out, which is highly unlikely.
Is that the one that goes through the multi-purpose
Children's
room?
area and then out into the gated patio and then through that door and then they end up out into the north view park area. But it's not what I would call a utilized door.
Yeah, correct. Not heavily utilized.
So we thought it would be more important just to focus on the front door. Go ahead, Ms. Linda.
Thank you.
What you're saying is what we talked about, that $40,000 of technology services, the $40,000 budgeted. You said that was replacement of the door counter / anti-theft device. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
So that is in there.
Yes.
It's under the
But I
40,000.
want to confirm this.
Okay.
Christina has different numbers. I want to be sure that what we have is correct, but that was our thinking,
Okay.
was that the back door didn't get used.
Can you check while we're talking?
Yeah, I don't have that. I thought I had access, but I don't.
Okay, that's all, because that's what I was told, so let's just make sure that's where we're at. Awesome.
So, I'll just wait for Christina.
So I believe, yes, you're right. And I would just take out something else that I needed to cover there.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else on the library? All right.
Thank you.
Focus on non-departmental.
So earlier I told you a page had been removed from the very beginning. I think it was page 30. So when you get to, and I apologize, I didn't write down the page number. It actually should be page 64. 64 is for general fund non-departmental. Councilmember Vaughn had asked that we add the categories, so we've added the categories so you can kind of see where those monies actually come for. And they now agree with what the rest of the department budgets. So what's budgeted here are items that really aren't department specific, but they could be building specific. For instance, Stormwater does not have a non-departmental because, well, they're kind of on their own. Water, wastewater does have a non-departmental, and general fund has a non-departmental. The golf course does not, because they place most of their non-departmental items in their general admin, or general administration. So, again, this is pretty much where we're going to place anything that is really not related to a specific department, but has to be paid. And also in here, we've added a transfer out to capital replacement. I know it's only $500 or $5,000. The goal is at the end of the fiscal years to add to it if there's anything that we can add to it, so that we have a replacement plan for our capital. And staff will be working on some type of information to tell you what items have to replace, when they have to be replaced, similar to what has to be done with the fire department. They know they have to have it replaced within a certain amount of time, and this is where we'll start moving these monies to, is into the capital replacement fund. And you'll see those under the non-departmental. So then next we move on to the enterprise funds. And again, we added just a page that kind of outlines the departments for the residents of Universal City so that they can understand what's included in this department. There were changes to what was presented to council, not under the revenue side, but under the expenditure side. The primary change is going to be on page 70 in yours and 71. We had to add back in the debt service and the capital improvements, which were not on the summary originally submitted to council. Right?
Everybody know where we are?
Is everybody okay?
So you're on page 70, we're moving to page 71.
So before, what you have is up to total utility non-departmental of $889,000 approximately. What had to be added in and factored into the revenue expenditures, or revenue over expenditures, was the debt service and the capital improvements. And thank you, Randy and Athena, for pointing that out. So scroll down. And then you'll see the capital improvements are here. Other than that change.
Yes, sir.
One second. So that had the Walmart water line on it, which I thought was going to be ARPA. Is that right, 350? And that was previously in the version we had in the capital improvement fund?
There's a note to add it to ARPA, but we've not updated the ARPA spreadsheet or the ARPA information for what it's going to be used for. So what we'll do then at that point is we'll move it out of this budget into, or transfer the money from ARPA to this budget.
So there's a, you're talking about redoing the ARPA plan, I guess?
Yes.
Kind of like, is that kind
Well,
of?
not necessarily redoing it, but revisiting it to be sure that we're on target for what we had planned. And if any changes have been made, that we can make those changes at that time.
So I think what you're asking is this was not originally the ARPA budget, and you are correct. So Randy had certain water and sewer line projects in the ARPA fund, and as he's going through and doing his plan, he's recognizing that the water and sewer plans he identified in there maybe aren't as a higher priority as this particular line. So he's wanting to switch out one of his ARPA projects for the Walmart water line project.
Okay.
Does that make sense? No, I'm asking, I understand that you, it would
Well,
make sense to you.
I guess I'm not clear if it's moving or if it's staying. You're saying it's going to stay here in the utility fund, not
Well,
ARPA?
we'll have to transfer the money from the ARPA
The ARPA's
into
gonna reimburse.
into this one, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else? Okay, let's press on.
So again, the rest of the utility departments didn't have any change to the revenues, and their expenditures will be material.
We made any cuts.
No.
We made no cuts to this department.
The only thing that is not noted in the council packet is on page 76 of your packet. There is a new full-time wastewater serviceman position that was added, and it was not noted on the department breakdown. right there, okay. So then this information has been added.
So this is under utility fund?
Yes, that's correct. The other
Ms. Bowman
department.
has a question.
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think we're like going from public works into water, so I did have a public works question, but forgive me, because I don't know if I actually set my questions up like correctly with the budget. I just went like public works, so I had two questions for Randy. One of them was the Rifle Gap cul-de-sac was 70,000. That's public works, right? Am I in the right spot?
Streets.
That was back in, that's its general fund.
That's right. Oh, go ahead and answer it.
Sorry, can I go back? Can you just explain
Yes.
to me what your plans are for Rifle
So
Gap?
Rifle Gap is the cul-de-sac up there that is sinking in that cul-de-sac. We've had complaints from the residents there of standing water that can't even get out of the car to the driveway. So we're gonna have to rehab that cul-de-sac because the water have positive drainage down the hill on Rifle Gap. So it's concentrated just in that cul-de-sac.
Okay, and then same thing, I guess, because I'm sorry, I guess that was in there too, was probably that you have a small line item for annual alley reconstruction, not the aviation one, the smaller line one, I think it was, yeah, 45,000. Can you just tell me what that's for?
That's for the design work. Let me get to it real quick.
Okay. Yeah, just the $45,000 one, not the big one.
So there's a 3-year plan. So we have 35,000 that was budgeted in this fiscal year. Next year I have 45,000 budgeted for the next alleyway design.
Design what alley?
Yeah, tell her what you mean by.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
So-
I just don't know what you're talking about.
So we're targeting the paved alleys that we currently have now, rehabbing. And this one here, that one on there. So this one is one of the, I think it's the one that we have in Coronado, right there at between Balboa and Corvera.
Okay.
It's that alley right there.
That's all I had for public works, or wherever that was, sorry.
Utilities is under public works.
Okay, so now we're okay to go to the utility fund then? Or we're-
Water, sewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Utility fund's done, so now we're moving on to
I do have one water.
water and sewer. Okay.
Okay.
Anything to highlight there?
The utility, non-departmental.
So page 81.
Okay, we'll pass what my question was. Sorry to interrupt you. So on 77 for water,
Beg your pardon?
on page 77 for water, Randy, can you tell us a little bit about like how much water we have and how much we're typically using? So you have in here, you want to buy some more groundwater rights.
Yeah, we have a program every year to buy groundwater rights. Currently, in this last fiscal year, we overpumped. Currently have 3,747 acre feet of water. Our critical reduction was just over 1,000 acre feet. So we pumped 2,747 that was our amount after the 1,000 cut. So our pumpage was 2,787. So we overpumped. So that required me to go out and lease. We turned on the Carrizo. The Carrizo, when we had it on, got shut down several times due to main breaks, pump failures, and we're only getting 1,000 gallons a minute, just under 1,000 gallons a minute.
Those are failures or were they SLDCs?
They're failures.
They're failures.
So it's either between theirs or Shirts getting it to us. The Shirts had a main break right at 1518 that feeds the water because it travels through Shirts to us. So during the critical period when we're at 40% reduction, that's when they hit us with the shutdowns. So we had to jump on getting a EAA. We leased out, let me see here, 125 acre feet. That cost us $15,000 to lease that water out. And then we paid $28,000 for 39 acre feet on the freezing water.
So if you have the opportunity to spend 230, how many acre feet, if you had a guess, would you be able to buy?
So in this one here, I have budgeted for water rights. We have here 35 acre feet that we want.
That's all I revised, 37 acre.
Well, that's been my average, between 30 and 35. We currently put a request in for this year's amount. We have 35 in this year's budgeted, and there's no water rights to be given. So we haven't found a seller yet. But we have that money there that way. Because you never know when it's going to pop up. Somebody wants to sell water rights, but there's only so much out there, so you have to be ready to buy it when it comes available.
Great, thank you. And other questions on the water meters. So I guess we're starting a water meter replacement program, is that kind
Yes,
of?
we had to put it on hold due to the fact that there's meter shortage right now. So we had to put it on hold, so the meters that we had in stock is left for inventory due to the growth that we have. And we've also applied for a grant. So that's one thing that we have to do part of this meter replacement program is to have a matching 100,000 match to go after the next replacement program that we want to do. So our goal is to go in there, have a healthy stock for the new growth that we're going to be experiencing here pretty soon, but then to be able to continue to start our replacement program that's overdue right now by sitting with the meters that we have right now.
And are we doing size for size replacements, or?
We do size for size replacement. Currently, that's what we're experiencing now is meters that are going out right now. So we have to deplete our inventory that we got to address those plus the growth that we have.
So if someone says I had a 5/8 meter and now it's a 3/4 and I have a higher base fee, is that not accurate as far as you know?
Well, we have residents, you have the option when we replace meters if you want to increase it. We have that happen all the time. So if anybody's getting an increase, they're told when we're replacing the meter, we're putting the same meter in that they have, or they have the option to upgrade. They also have the option to go from whatever size that they have to reduce it as well. So they have options when we're out there.
But that would be their option, not?
Yeah, so when I go out there and replace whatever you got, we're going to put back what you have out there. Part of this replacement program. And that's what we budget for. We budget for 5/8, we buy 5/8 by 3/4, we buy 3/4, we buy 1/8, and we have every size unit that we got.
Yeah.
I just know someone's gonna ask me this, if someone wants to downgrade from there, if they got a 3/4 and they didn't know they were getting 3/4 some magical way, how would they downgrade? Would they just call Public Works?
They call the utility office that they want to have it switched, we'll switch it. Because there's impact fees that if they upsize, if they're downsizing, there's no impact fee, because we've already paid for it, so they're downsizing, we're okay with that.
But here's the thing, if somebody wants to downsize because they think they're gonna save a couple dollars a month, they're not doing themselves or a future homeowner a favor by downsizing. There is a reason now why all new homes need to have a 3/4 inch, and a lot of that has to do with the demand and the pressure and the system. So I would think from a staff perspective, we would never recommend to somebody that they downsize from a 3/4 inch to a 5/8 inch.
Everything that we put in new is 3/4.
Yeah.
We don't, because 3/4 is, you have a 3/4 service going to your house.
Yeah.
Well, my curb stop that I'm feeding you is 3/4, where the meter's reducing.
Yeah.
So we don't, back in the day, that's what they put in. So we have a lot of 5/8, we have a 5/8 by 3/4. But everything new is standard, we put in 3/4, everything new.
But you would let someone know if you had a 5/8 and they were going to a 3/4, they would know. They should know. Like if they had a 5/8, but now they have a 3/4, you let them know.
Yeah, so.
That, hey, this is a 3/4.
Because if I'm changing out your meter, I gotta go knock on your door, like,
Yeah.
shut your water off. So we're there letting you know that we're replacing your meter, telling you all about it.
Okay.
Stuff like that. So that's part of the process of changing out your meter. But currently, right now, we're not doing the replacement program. We're only changing out meters that go bad right now.
Okay, but would you recommend to anybody that has a 3/4 that they go down?
I recommend, because this is what we encounter. People that have the 5/8 are always upgrading their meters. They have the full 3/4 because they're putting in irrigation systems. And that's what the irrigators recommend and stuff like that. So we've held off. I rarely have somebody, well, we don't offer it for new construction. It's always 3/4. But we've had people with 1 inch want to reduce, go back to 3/4, something like that. But we get that option.
I wouldn't recommend it either. I just saying I've had a resident say that magically they had a 5/8, but it got put into a 3/4, and I guess they didn't know. I'm not saying that's accurate or anything. I'm just asking.
Yeah, they need to come talk to us.
Yeah, just purely asking. So, okay, that's still resolved. It wasn't a suggestion or anything. I was just asking if they could move. It was just one person. It wasn't, a bunch of people or anything. So
Yeah, they can.
I was just curious how
they
would
can
do
make the
that.
request and we can do it.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Okay, next item.
Stormwater?
Stormwater.
Yes, sir. The only change to stormwater was that we added in their capital improvements. We added the page to cover it, but, yeah.
Any questions on that one?
Thank you so much.
Okay. Russ?
We're on page 84 approximately in the budget packet. So we're on golf course now. The budget packet shows the revenues for general and admin, I believe to be 1.861500. Because we moved the 550,000 out, then it's reduced their revenue to 1.311. So then if you look at page 86, you'll see that the venue tax revenue that's being transferred in is 1.2 million. And then under expenditures, on page 90, for building maintenance, it's been reduced from 1.1 to $550,000. Those were the only items in general and admin.
Any questions on that? That's what we discussed. Okay.
I guess the building maintenance, so the 550, my goal would be that we have some kind of consensus on what the direction is, that we can agree before putting that in there. And so I don't know if there's a way to, or I'm just gonna put this out there, is maybe pull that back, have some kind of workshop where we decide what is the future of the golf course, and what is the vision, do we want to fund that, how do we want to fund it? And then once we have that, we can always put it back in. Rather than leaving it in there with, I wouldn't want the city to run off and spend a bunch of money on engineering that council.
No, we're not going to do anything with it until council gives us some direction. I do want to add, though, that they initially had 50,000 in their building and maintenance, which is their HVAC contract and other things that they have to do. So it is 500,000. The reason is it's 550 in parks and 500,000 here is because we had to account for what they already had in there. So we just threw the bigger portion towards parks. But no, they're not going to spend any of it until we give some direction. Remember, the only direction that you've given us so far is yes on the computers, which they've added into their budget, yes on the upsizing of the fiber lines for speed and continuity, which is in here. And then the other thing that we talked about was the possibility of, with this 500,000 of doing the expanded parking lot. That is desperately needed, but no, we're not going to touch it until we get direction from council.
Would you like that to be tonight or separate?
We can do it tonight, we can do it separate, it's completely up to you.
Do you have an estimate for the parking lot?
No. We had done an estimate for a temporary parking lot, but if council is going to provide the funding, then we'll go out and get the estimates for a permanent parking lot. When I say temporary, we were going to use, Randy's guys were going to grade it and throw down some old reused asphalt so that we had a temporary surface to walk on. But if we're going to do a permanent parking lot, we'll get a contractor to go in there, survey it, sheet the grade, put the plans together, tell us how we need to get the water off the land and all of those other things. We would just do a real parking lot.
Just, I know you're not going to want to say it, but are we talking maybe 100,000 or 300,000? If you just had to just wild guess to expand.
You know, a lot of it we can do in-house. Currently, the one that we're going to do in conjunction with EDC is we're going to partner with one of our contractors that we work with and do it together to save them some money. So that one there, I see us doing the same. The only thing that we need to know is I gotta get a good footprint on where this parking lot's gonna go. So if there is any future expansion for a building in that site, I don't wanna build a parking lot where that's gonna encroach. So we gotta kind of get everything surveyed out there, get elevations, and then that way we leave a footprint for any future building that would go out there that we're gonna build this parking lot. So, but design-wise, I gotta have a design. That's a given. That's probably $20,000 for design. And then it's just a matter of how much rock I'm gonna encounter on elevation. We got a whole around, we can break a lot of it out ourselves. But we got a pretty good contractor that works with us, and we've done joint projects with them before.
So let's start it. Is it more than 200,000 or less than 200,000? Just put them on the spot.
I would say less than 200,000.
Okay. So if that was less than 200,000, so kind of talking with the golf staff, if there were really just besides the computers and the internet and then the parking, the only other critical area that is if you only wanted to do one other item besides the parking lot, that would be the flooring. I mean, I hope all of you have been in there. You can't tell so much when you're having a lot of people in there and there's a party, but when you're only showing a wedding group around, if you took a good look at that flooring and it were in your home, you probably would be embarrassed by it. So I would say the other big item that we would like to tackle, if we're only going to just think about this year right now, would be to go in and replace all of the flooring and get rid of the notion that we're going to have carpet and go to some kind industrial, I don't know what that word is called. Mr. Goldsby probably knows. Looks like wood, but it's not wood, whatever it's called.
LVT, luxury vinyl tile.
Yes, thank you.
That wouldn't interfere with your future plans, or wouldn't be a waste to do the.
It would have to be done anyway with the future plan, and that's why if we were to do it, we would not just do the wedding area, but we would do the pro shop and the bar and the offices all at the same time. Because the main thing is if we did a renovation, we know we would have to do the floor anyway. The other thing would just be taking the wall out, which I think that gap could probably be figured out.
Between the pro shop and the.
Between the pro shop and the lounge. That would be the major thing. Any flooring that would end up being in the bar area, if the kitchen got expanded, hopefully could be reused somewhere else.
Didn't you say at some point though that there's a structural issue of why the flooring's hard?
So we actually had a structural engineer already come out and look at that for us. And he said, no, go ahead. If we have to, rip up the carpet. In the banquet side, it's concrete floor, right? No issue there. On the other side where it is the wood floor, is that right? Or did I get it backward?
No, so the banquet room, so half of the building is divided and it's on concrete and the other half is on plywood, I think. And so that's kind of the problem is like we have carpet tiles, and so when we pick up the carpet tiles to replace it, the plywood was coming off with it.
Yeah, so what the structural engineer said, look, just rip out all the plywood. Whoever comes back to put in the carpet will need to float it so that the new plywood matches up with the concrete. And then when you put your, whatever 3 letters he said down, you actually have a level surface.
What are those letters again, Barrett?
LVG.
LVG.
LVT, luxury vinyl tile. Don't let the luxury fool you, it's not all that luxurious.
But we understand, obviously it would be a commercial grade. So that would be the other project that we would consider doing, but again, not having direction from council, we haven't gotten estimates on anything. We're just holding tight until you tell us what you would like
Like,
us
just
to
to
do.
finish I would be fine with the parking lot and the flooring, and if you want to throw a few thousand at the men's bathroom and rehab it, I'm fine with that too. But I'd be interested to hear what the rest of the council says.
The men's bathroom, oh, have you been to the men's bathroom?
Yes.
Yeah, so have I. It stinks and it's dirty. It's old. When we redid the building the last time, we did not do the men's room. We did the ladies.
That's what I thought. That's what I told him. I said, I think they did the ladies, because he said the men's is horrible. And I was like, the ladies isn't like it's probably been updated at some point, I guess.
The men's has not been
But the
updated.
men's was not.
Okay, let's go
Yes,
to
we
class.
So yeah, I'm with Councilman Vaughn on that, actually. I'm okay with the parking lot and the flooring on the golf course and the 50,000 for, you know, stuff that was already there or whatever. So I'm not opposed to the flooring and the parking lot for this year. That's it.
All right, Paul?
Upgrades to the kitchen?
So that's a bigger issue. You can do upgrades to the kitchen, but where in the heck are you gonna put everything? There's no space.
That was my question. That's something we don't want to tackle until we decide what we're going to do as far as the possible expansion of the kitchen or.
So even with the parking lot and the flooring, you know, we'll go out and get the estimates and we'll bring it all back to you, even though now you're saying, yeah, that's what you'd like it for, but we're gonna bring it back for you and let you look at it and talk about it and discuss it and, you know, see what those dollars are. And then in the interim, again, we have had a retail architect come out and look at the facility to try to work on the flow and the wedding and the cart and all that other area. And then he gave us his ideas on how it should be, and he agreed that separating golf from wedding would be the more appropriate thing to do, so there's not that butting of heads between golfers and wedding parties and events. And then he gave us some recommendations for how a bridal suite would be done, which if those were done, then that would be the time to expand the kitchen. The phasing that they gave us was that you can't really expand the kitchen and renovate the building or weddings and events until you get the cart people out of there. So their phasing would be cart barn area first, cart barn pro shop first, and then later the wedding area. But in terms of accommodating the brides and providing the bridal suite, which is really what's preventing us from getting more events, you know, we'll have to make do with what we have right now. But I think some of that flooring would definitely be a selling point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to add to that, I was all into the parking lot idea, and I still am, but you're absolutely right, that floor is you point out a couple spots that were even the bad parts, and they were bad, and that's something that's needed like as soon as possible.
The flooring is shampooed constantly. And I know they do stain remover and everything else, and yeah, for a couple of days it looks like, oh, the stains are gone, and then they all magically appear again.
Okay. You good? Okay.
Thank you. Third item down, kind of in the middle, the maintenance building. I want to make sure that was maintenance on the building, not building a new maintenance building.
No, that's actually what we were just discussing.
Yeah,
It's just maintenance on the existing building.
okay, and it was down from 1.1 million in the packet that you sent out to us?
Yes.
Okay.
And then that
we cut it in half.
Yeah, okay, good, I just want to make sure.
That is the line that we will operate from on the items we just discussed.
I was scrambling to get caught up on where was that versus where was this.
I understand, so I apologize.
So with these additional things that council has made, that they would be amenable to, does that fit that into what we have allocated in the budget?
Well, now that you've given us the direction, we'll start working on legitimate estimates and then bring those back to you.
Okay, and I totally agree that the men's restroom needs, absolute need to be fixed.
We'll do what we can.
Okay. I think that, I would hope that we all agree that that needs to be included.
Yeah. You've never seen it.
I've heard stories.
Okay,
I couldn't tell if Bear was asking questions.
Oh, Bear, have you got anything to add,
He's
sir?
twiddling his pen.
No, he's
All right.
saying no.
Okay, bud. All right. Okay, so is that some guidance from us now, from council now? to help
That is
you?
very, very helpful. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent.
So that was really the only change within the golf course fund compared to what was presented to council. The next would be debt service funds. It's on page 103 of your packet. It is, thank you. On page 104, you have the debt service for the general fund. What's been added here, What's been added at the bottom is the tentative bond that I'm proposing be issued in September.
Okay.
And Mr. Quiroga will be here again on the 18th, the next meeting, right, Tuesday, to discuss that with you and to talk about it, to get your feedback.
Okay?
All right. Any questions, anybody, on this? We're going to hear from Victor again next week.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Randy, or Randy's consultant.
There were no changes to debt service for the utility fund, capital improvements fund. It's page 107 of your packet. So what's been added, can you scroll to the left one? The bottom line for revenues shows capital projects. That's the CPS 1% that has been allocated for capital improvements, but for whatever reason had been placed as a reserve fund, or reserve account under the general fund. So we're just putting it into capital improvements fund because it's capital projects. Right.
Do everybody in the council know what that CPS, the percent is? Okay, Ron Chase, why don't you?
I can explain it. So we get a franchise fee from CPS. It was 4%. It was 4%. CPS gives cities the ability to add an additional 1%. And if we add the 1% on, then it shows on the bill as the additional 1% per city. And when that was approved by the city council, the indication that they gave to the staff is that they wanted that 1% reserved for capital projects. So I think what happened when the word reserve for capital projects, that it got sent into the reserve funds, but it really should have been capital projects. And so we moved it from the reserve line category into capital projects.
Interestingly enough, we were one of the few cities that does take advantage of that CPS.
Well, we were one of the first. Now there's a lot more.
Not most that picked up, but we were, I think our staff.
And the capital projects that we used it for have primarily been when we did not have any of the grant money that we had for parks. We were using that capital projects money for some of the early on improvements that we made to the parks.
Yes, Ms. Bowman.
Before you passed it, real quick, but I'm just double checking, Randy, the alley that you're doing on Aviation, it's not the paved one, it's the one that goes, I drove, so I was trying to figure out what we're talking about. You're talking about the one that's not paved, right? The one that's like all weeds and looks like I didn't want to bring the Jeep down there because I thought this isn't a good idea, but that's the one that you're talking about. It's also pink and girly and has stickers on it, I'm not getting it ruined. But I was trying to figure out where we were talking about, but it's not the paved one.
Yeah, it's not the paved one.
It's the following one that you're gonna pave and that you're gonna do the 154.
The one between Trudy and Crockett, that one there, on Aviation?
Parallels.
Parallels, yes, parallels.
Yeah, but it's like all weeds and like.
Yes.
Is it behind grass or it's the next block over?
No, we already did grass, but
It's the next
It's
block
the next
over.
one over, that's my thought, because I went down grass and I was like, oh, this is paved already. You're gonna pave the following one that's not paved. Perfect, that's all I need to know.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just want to say that 1% for CPS is self-imposed. Can we just undo that, put it back in the general fund?
Well, we put it where the council told us to put it.
Right, so that's just my question is, if we, whatever that policy was, can we just undo it? The way we have more flexibility with it.
Just put it in the general fund.
With the rest of the CPS franchise fee.
Is that doable? Chris, is that doable?
So we were just discussing whether or not there was any requirement with CPS, and I don't know that there was. So we were going to read through the minutes to see what they actually said.
So we know that you adopted it by, I believe by ordinance or resolution, I don't remember which one. We'll go back and look and see what that says to make sure that it did in there actually say that it had to be reserved for capital projects only. And
I
if
don't
it didn't,
recall.
we can make the adjustment. Either way, it's gonna be used for a capital project, right?
So then,
How much does that 1% bring in
only
approximately?
about 200,000 a year.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody okay on this? Yeah, let's get a clarification on
So capital improvements for the utility fund. There was a change to the line item that has well line upgrade rebuild, and I'm sorry, forgive me. It is old public works yard capital improvement multi-year, and Grady touched on it. It's increased by 150,000, so now it's $300,000 budgeted.
that.
Okay, so the next is capital improvements for stormwater. I just noted that golf course, the whole 8 and 9 storm drain project, $650,000 is being transferred from the golf course to stormwater this fiscal year. And the next fiscal year, it'll be $450,000 that's being transferred over. So I question whether or not it should actually, I think it should still be a proposed budget of 1.1 because the work hasn't begun yet.
Okay. Do you all understand what the project would include? It's going back to Mother Nature's way where the creek flows on the course. And if you have ever been out there in recent years, the erosion on both 8 and 9 has been unbelievable. I mean, it's almost not, the holes are almost not recognizable the way they are laid out because of what happened over the last 20 years. Very, very much needed addition. Okay.
On page 110 of the council packet, can you put it up? I'm in the wrong spot. There you go.
We're up to special revenue funds.
Special revenue funds, yes, sir. If you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see we've got, we've added the venue tax to special revenues here. So, as I mentioned before, all of these revenues were being recorded or being budgeted in the general fund, and they really should not. They're very restricted. Many of them are very restricted. Some are just restricted. The only change in here was, again, that we added the venue tax. But also, if we look at stormwater, I don't know what page is on here. Page 121 of your packet. Thank you. In your packet, I believe it says $135,000 is the revenue anticipated, and that's incorrect. It should be $25,000. So it's been corrected here. And the venue tax, which is the next page.
I'm sorry, can I stop you for just a moment?
Yes, sir.
And the impact fees, much like the water impact fees, are new connections to our water system, is that correct? To our sewer system, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So the venue tax, which is what council discussed on the 5th of July, we're anticipating 1.7 million. And the interest, it's a little low, I estimated at 3,000, but you'll see the transfer to the golf course is 1.2, and then the transfer to the general fund is $550,000. And that was pretty much it.
On the ARPA, should there be a 350 transfer out for the
450.
Walmart water line?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but yes, sir, there will be. There absolutely will be.
Okay. Is that, I think that's it, isn't it?
Yes, sir, that's it.
Okay.
Questions, comments, suggestions?
What type of guidance do you need now? Since we've talked about some of the additions, some of the movements, what else do you need from council to this evening?
For this evening?
Well, our best guess estimate at this point, with our revenues and our expenses and the transfers that you've approved or advised us to make, you put 50,000 toward something in the building department, and the question is that that means you have a remaining 500,000. Are there capital projects or items that were cut that you want to add back in, and or what do you want us to do? That's the question.
Can you update us on the right turn lane on Pat Booker to 1604?
Randy?
Yeah, currently, they're looking to wrap up design and coordination with TxDOT. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen, but that won't happen until about December timeframe. So there's a lot of coordination. What we're trying to do is get TxDOT to fund most of it, if not all of it. So but they have their own funding mechanism. So we're going to look into see, instead of going to the MPO because it's too small, because it's estimated right at $1 million, just a little over.
Okay.
So it really wouldn't qualify for MPO funding. So we're trying to go through TxDOT to see what avenue of funding, and that's part of that time frame that we're going to.
So you think in December we'll know whether they're going to play ball or not?
Yeah, that's what we're hoping.
Okay. Then the other one that I was just going to ask a update on, so we talked about the Kitty Hawk a couple of meetings ago, the new improvements there, and it's like a big scary number, like $4.5 million, and it might need to be done in the near term. What are the thoughts on funding that?
Yeah, that's the stuff that keeps you awake at night.
Well, the ARPA 350 is going to get us started, right? So I already have bond funds, so the portion right there, the tract of land at the corner that we're looking at selling, we'll have the sewer line in part of this bond project with the stub outs. This water line also is needed for the improvements for that tract and for the extension beyond that. So that's really what we're calling kind of phase one. That big number that you mentioned, that's the area that we need to look into how we're going to fund it. We will look into, those are all eligible for impact fees, eligible, because it's all new improvements. So we're going to look at how much we have that we can contribute to that. That would offset some of that cost. But there's still quite a bit more that we need to, between the land sale and whatever else, that look how we can fund that project.
Not an easy question.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's a great question, but there's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of moving mechanisms that we can use to get to that point, but some of that is discussion that we need to have just with council.
That's good.
Do we have to spend the 500,000? Like, can you just put it in the general fund?
Yeah, we
Well,
would,
it's already in the general.
it's already.
Oh, okay, but like you have to spend it,
It would
like we
just show
have
that you
to.
have a $500,000 surplus.
We could move it to the capital
Yeah, of
improvement
course,
fund
you can
and
move it to
earmark
capital
it
improvement,
for
right, good.
the
Or
right
you
turn
can
lanes.
decide on some of the items that we cut for fire, police, and public works. If you wanted to add some of those items back in.
Okay, I think it's probably still open for some more discussion for us, and if we can do a little homework, figure out where we want to go from here. Because what you could say, we can put it in one particular place, or we could take a look at capital improvements related to police, fire, public works, whatever, in terms of what to do with that $500,000. What would you suggest that we do next?
We're going to read the list again because we're anticipating that you may not have gotten all of that in. And in that way, poor Christine does not have department heads. She's knocking on her.
You've already put that
Can
list
she give
together.
us numbers, like why she's doing
Yes.
it? Okay, so I can write down.
So for the capital replacement items, we had, fire had been cut $75,000. There was a chipper truck and a F-250 crew truck. That was $120,000. I believe that was under,
General service.
thank you, sir.
How much was it?
120.
That was for the chipper truck and the F-250, sorry, the chipper trailer, I guess? It's not an actual truck, right?
It's actually a truck with a box on the back.
Okay, and then the actual shred chipper is towed behind it?
Yeah, it's towed behind it, that's already been yes.
Okay.
These purchases, or mobile equipment purchases, was reduced, I'm sorry, forgive me. There was a batwing shredder for $21,000.
That would have been Parks.
And a John Deere tractor for $60,000.
No, that's in general services.
$85,000 general services, a John Deere tractor, and a batwing shredder.
Computer equipment for fire.
Oh, I'm sorry, they're asking Randy batwing shredder.
What's a battling shredder?
So it's our John Deere with the bat wing, so it's, it looks like.
Bat wing.
Bat wing, yeah.
Bat wing.
Bat wing.
I heard battling, like BATTLING. I was like, is it a fighting truck?
So it mows and shreds at the same time, correct?
Yeah, it's a 96 model tractor.
Got it.
And then there was the bikes for the police department.
20,000.
20,000. Computer equipment for fire was 13,000.
How much was that?
13,000.
Thank you.
And I think it's a general consensus that we would like to be able to reinstate some of the employee recognition programs, which is about 30,000.
Yes. Kidding.
And no, that's not nice.
Everybody's like,
Let's see. That's really what we have right now. We should put this in the
We're sitting at about 400
for Michael, 50,000.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Plus the 50,000 that you wanted to try for Michael's department. And then if you decide you want to do a diesel mechanic. Does anybody remember what the employee cost was for the diesel mechanic? Randy?
I know what I had 220 in there, and it brought it down to 150.
So approximately $60,000.
$60,000.
That does not take into account the TMRS, the Social Security, Medicare, medical insurances.
So figure 75,000.
Approximately, yes.
question for Chief Byrne, if you don't mind. She said that your budget was cut by 75,000. Do you have a good breakdown of like priorities, what you would, like what was cut, what would you put back in first?
First thing I would.
It's like $75,000?
Yeah. The first thing I would put back in is the bills that need to come out, which are those contractual agreements like Target Solutions and the image trend. Those are all contracts that we had to cut that communication down.
Approximately $30,000.
I think it was approximately 30,000.
And the other one was the chairs,
Yeah,
which I think we got that taken care of.
I think we're good on that.
What's the impact to the department and ultimately to the residents in terms of responsiveness, notifications to you guys, abilities to communicate amongst yourselves, et cetera, by having to eliminate some of those contracts?
We can't eliminate it, so I would have to do without something else.
So you're gonna have to take
That would have
it.
been eliminated, because again, we discussed, we have a part-time position within finance, that if it came down to it, my department was willing to let go of that part-time position, take on those extra responsibilities if they had to. It's a lot for them, but it would be worth it because we know they need those contracts.
So is your part-time finance position currently filled?
No, sir.
Okay, so it's an unfilled position that's budgeted for?
It's been budgeted for years, yes, sir.
We've added other efficiencies within the finance department that we can actually now completely do with that position.
So it's a consideration.
The main thing we had to cut was a community risk reduction, but I think we kind of worked it out to where that's where we buy all the fire prevention stuff, the stuff we give away in the schools, all of that, but I think we're gonna be able to use this other avenue.
I believe we can use the child safety. I'll have to check the municipal court codes again. But to the best of my knowledge, if it is in any form a level to teach a child or to protect them, then you can use the child safety fund.
That was a big hit for us because it takes away all that community outreach, but if we can use this, then I think that's gonna be the fix for that.
So it's 30,000 for contracts and it's 13,000 for the computer.
Yes, ma'am.
What's going to be the impact to your department of not having that money? Again, because I go back to the beginning of my opening statements about prioritizing first responders, safety of the residents, everything that we can do to make sure that our police and fire and public safety, et cetera, are fully funded in order to provide the best level of services for the safety of our residents.
I'm always gonna say it's gonna impact us because obviously that's how we respond, that's how we make sure we're getting the notifications.
You're being a lot less dramatic than Randy was, by the way.
But then again, sorry, we already know that we're gonna make a difference in the contract services, so what he's really out is $13,000 for a computer, which you had scheduled other computers and we just backed off by a couple.
We bought one, and the other one was for the new fire marshal that we just hired. It's a tablet in the sense that he does those inspections while he's out in the field on the tablet. So.
And that was one of the things that you cut?
Yes.
To do those inspections.
Mr. Adjournment.
No, while you're up there, the 13,000 in computer, I was gonna say something there, but that's sort of been asked and answered. So actually, I'm not sure exactly all the unfundeds that you have, but I mean, I'm looking at these, this $20,000 in bicycles being extremely important to the PD as far as the outreach for the community, as you explained, being able to go into an area, pull off the bike off of a police vehicle, which sometimes can be intimidating going around and being able to have that police officer on a bike, seeing what's going on, and the major community outreach that is too. I think that's something that really important that we need on that list. And I'm with Councilman Buck here that the PD and fire department are our first responders is something that's very vital. And if we can do anything to check off some of those things, it's a win.
I appreciate that.
I mean, but while you're up there, as far as, since we asked Chief Vernon the same thing, other than that 20,000 on the bikes, is there anything that you're saying that you cut that you can really use?
Going back also to what Chief Vernon touched on earlier was the health exams, the chest x-rays. We had added money for that into the budget for this year to do the chest x-rays. Like he mentioned also, that's an unfunded mandate now that came from the state that is required.
Right.
So we've actually been ahead of the curve by budgeting for this, the few prior years. But that's part of it that's going to come with it, so it's something that's going to need to be done. And it's important for the health of our officers and for the firefighters and everybody that does it.
How much was that?
I believe it was an extra 5.
It was higher on his just because his manpower is hard. I want to say when we broke that down, oh wait, I got it right here. Give me 1 second. It was about $130 a person.
So it was roughly 25,000 for both departments?
Yeah, for both. You're right about that.
25 for both?
That would cover both of us.
Did you say it was
100? We have 24 folks and you have 40, 45? Yeah.
And it's $150 approximately?
Yes. Okay. And that was additional onto that $525.
So it's not even $10,000?
Yeah. Less than 10.
That's just for one department.
That was both of
That was
us.
both.
Yeah.
They have 65 approximately together, $150 a person.
Let's just go with that myself.
Chiefs, plural, tell me how many people you each have?
We have 24, 45.
24 plus 45 times $150.
Say 70 times $150.
70
So who's going to add up the fastest?
times $150, and 10,500, okay.
Yeah. I think when we ran all the
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
last year, we were right at that number.
Okay, the other thing that wasn't on here was, I don't know, I don't love this. Because I feel like it's kind of not fair, because there's like this big list, and I know the library said like she gave up stuff, and her isn't on here. Like, I feel like it's kind of unfair, that's what I was trying to say, like, is there a way that money can be like just set aside instead of going through and being like, well, you get this and you don't get this, and I feel like that's a little harsh for some of these departments that, like the library, like she looked kind of sad, like, I just like, I feel bad, like, I don't feel like it's very fair that like everybody seems to have taken some cuts, like everybody seems to across the board have worked really hard on their budgets, and I think that's the hard part is like,
This is the hard part.
yeah, like,
This is the hard part.
but like, it's a hard one because it's like, who are we to decide that like, the police chief gets something and fire chief gets something, but Randy's SOL and so is the library lady, and so I'm trying to figure out a way, like, is there a fair way to do
But
this?
Randy's not SOL, Randy's getting vehicles. Christina, there's still plenty of money that we can add, the information that was taken from Christina as well.
Okay.
So Randy's got his.
I mean,
Randy has
yeah.
his vehicles that he wanted, his tractor he wanted. The fire has the contract information that they wanted. They have the bikes, they have the exams.
Well, what about the poor library lady?
The
'Cause I didn't
library
write
is
down
next
hers,
on
so.
the list. So let's do the library next.
Okay, so
Okay.
like Christine, she doesn't have, like I said, I don't have anything written down for her, so.
I think we removed about $20,000 from your budget for the back gate.
Yes, that's correct.
And if she decides she doesn't need the back gate, you can always buy more books, right?
We always need something.
Absolutely.
Like I said, so I guess if you were gonna, if we have to spend the 500,000, I guess like spreading it a little evenly, but I'm more like, can you just put it in savings and?
Well, you can't really put it in savings. I could
Okay.
put it into capital replacement fund.
Okay.
We could give Christina 29.5, so that would be approximately 300,000. And we could put the other 200,000 into capital replacement, if that's what council chooses to do.
Is that how much
I
the
mean, that's
total?
to everyone, obviously.
I'm sorry, forgive me. Talk
No,
about
I'm done, go ahead, I'm done,
Phil?
I'm done.
I would just make a proposal that we give them an amount of money and then they decide where they want to stick it in their budget. So if we said 50,000 for fire, 50 for police, 50 for general services, 50 for Michael, 20 for library, and 30 for employee recognition, that'd be 250. And then we would have 300,000 that we could put in capital improvement for either Kitty Hawk, Pat Booker, or fire trucks, would be what I would propose.
I think that's fair and equitable. The only thing that I would note is that, well, some departments might have only cut 30,000. The Public Works Department cut almost 1.5 million from their budget to make the balance happen. And so if you're going to be fair and equitable and divvy up, I think that you need to have a
At least their
larger chunk
vehicles.
that goes to the Public Works. And I would say for vehicles, that way we can stay on our equipment replacement program. Rather than being in dire need of placing equipment, we would have it replaced as it should be. Again, that's up to you. I'm just not trying to get, because look at all of them salivating.
I know, I love what I'm saying, like, this is not, it doesn't seem very fair.
It is a fact that Randy's department took the big hit. He got rid of every single one of his vehicle requests. Mobile equipment requests he got rid of. And so he did take the biggest hit. So my opinion would be that we at least do the vehicles.
And how much was that, the 120?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that all the vehicles?
It was 120 and then 85.
And then the 85, exactly, for the
So that's
equipment. So it's
200,000. But
205,000.
again, go back to what Phil was saying.
And then if you wanted to take the other portion and divide it among the departments, then that would be fine. But really, we do need to get the equipment replaced. It's just a consideration.
Okay, so 120 plus 85.
Okay.
I was going to say, another way we could look at it is, we could earmark just, I think the funding for the chest x-rays are for police and fire, especially because it's mandated by law, is something we probably should look at a minimum, adding back in tonight. Is it possible for us to have ongoing conversations about the remainder, about where we think it is and how to divide it up? And to your point, maybe earmark some for capital improvements and divide some amongst the rest of the departments. Is that possible, or is that like, we need to decide tonight?
The decision doesn't have to be made tonight, but please keep in mind that we have to have the budget pretty much nailed down to be presented officially in the first week in August. I have to look at my calendar. So we really don't have a lot of time. And if you take the vehicles and equipment for Randy's departments, and then the $50,000 that was for development services, $30,000 for the fire department for their computers.
Chest and computer and contracts.
And it was contracts and computers, I think.
Yes.
And then $20,000 for the bikes for the police department, $10,500 for chest x-rays, and $20,000 to give back to Christina for her gates.
What does that add up to?
I was starting at 255 for just the cars and the development services.
You said 120 for the development services, right?
So 120 for the cars, 85, and then 50 for development services. So that was 255. I just didn't get the other
It'd be
little thing.
250 if it's 120 for general services.
It's approximately $335,000.
So that's with the back lane thing?
That's what I came up, 335,500.
So what's our total?
335.
Okay, 335, and then the rest in the capital improvements.
Yes, sir.
How does that agree?
I'm fine with that.
I'm all for that.
Okay.
Are you happy?
There, you want to weigh in?
Is everybody happy?
Are you happy, Christine?
I'm happy.
Okay, I think you got some direction from us.
I have a request for the staff.
Mr. Buck has a comment.
Sir.
Could you guys are gonna have to put together a budget that is represented by 0 increase in the property tax rate, correct?
I know the revenue.
A balanced, what was it that you explained to me the other day, Ms. Turner, that the city has to put together
Oh,
a
a
budget,
zero balanced budget.
a zero balanced
You
budget?
cannot have it, yes, but by taking the remainder and putting it into the capital projects, as Councilmember Vaughn has suggested, gets you to your zero balance budget.
Okay, good. So if we go with the exact tax rate, the Goolsby rate, that we had.
No, we're not talking tax rate right now. We're only talking anticipated revenues and expenditures. We'll be having this conversation again when we come back with you and present the tax roll and what the options are for the tax rate. If it comes back out at that time that we think the revenue is going to be even less, we'll be prepared to tell you what we've removed again.
Yeah, okay.
And when do we expect to get the tax rolls from Bear County that
July
says,
24th.
We have preliminaries.
when is it?
July 24th for the certified. The preliminaries, as of 7/7, they still had $50 billion in protest to resolve.
For Universal City or for
Just
Bear
total.
County?
They don't break it down by
Total, okay.
county or by city. So unfortunately, I can't even give you a good estimate until I get those numbers. I can tell you that I believe the tax rate we need to change slightly, we increased a little bit, but obviously we can only do 3.5%.
Right.
So, but I won't have those numbers until the 24th.
What I'm trying to get at here is if we could have an idea from you on the 18th of July, how would that impact our decisions on how we have, and I know we're not supposed to have the tax rate discussions yet and everything like that, so I don't want to get into specific numbers. But if you could give us like an approximate, for every $100,000 that you increase our budget, it will potentially cost us 0.5 cent of property tax per $100 of valuation, so that we kind of have an idea, okay, we want to give you this money, but we also have to be good stewards of the residents' money of Universal City. So I want to understand, not just, because if I had all this money, phew, I'd give it all to you guys, right? But I also represent, and I have to be a good, I have to be fiscally responsible for them. So what I want to see is what would be the impact potentially to those property tax rates approximately. If that makes
I'll
sense.
do my very best, yes, sir. And then I also have to provide fund balances. I spoke with the auditors earlier today. She's supposed to be getting me the information most likely tomorrow. I didn't trust the information that was provided in the prior audit because it didn't tie to anything within our trial balances. I don't know if it's because journal entries weren't made, if the adjusted journal entries weren't made, I don't know. So I'll have that information too for you because you did ask for it. Councilmember Bond.
Yes, Ms. Bowman.
Can I personally get a list of what we just added?
Yes, we will type it up and email it out to
Thank you.
everyone.
I very much appreciate
Thank you.
that, thank you.
Excellent. Okay.
One last comment, Mr. Mayor. Since we don't have closing comments tonight, I'd like to say very much thank you to all the staff that have taken so much time out of your days to be out here with us, and for the hard work that I know has gone into putting this budget together. I know it's a pain in the backside, and I know all the blood, sweat, tears, literal tears, Randy, that go into having to make some of these cuts. So thank you to all of you for all the efforts that you guys have put into there. Thank you to my fellow council members for being out here tonight for this unscheduled workshop meeting. Grateful to everybody. Thank you.
I'll just conclude as we end this meeting. It's a great budget session, great interaction. I think it was presented in a way that was very easy for us to comprehend and understand. I really appreciate what staff has done. Those of you in the audience, thank you for coming. And you guys have been here a long time in staff. And, Jeremy's probably going to sleep on the course tonight. Let's see. I don't know. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. This is part of the process. And with 2 brand new rookies here, thank you very much. I think I will commend staff. And I also will commend council for being exceptionally well prepared for tonight's meeting. Thank you very much. It's 5 to 9. We're going to get out of here at 5 to 9. This special session is over. Thank you.
Yeah.